This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, a more beautiful scene could not have greeted us this morning, as there's a slight little bank of mist mixed with beautiful little wispy clouds, and the sun is slowly coming up to start another day here in South Africa. It promises to be a good one. We're going to try and see if we can settle our leopard score and get that right. Steve is also out, and he's going to be following up on tracks for lions, which is going to be interesting to see which pride and where they've gone. There's a lot that's going on here this morning. There's been even a few calls too, so it promises to be a really good morning. There's a lot that we are going to go and try and look for. It also looks like it's going to be the most beautiful day, so we hope that you're strapped in and ready for this, your very own live African safari. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. Like I say, it's a beautiful, beautiful morning. There's so much atmosphere this morning, with all the moisture on the ground and the coolish air. We've got this mist layer forming. We've got the sun that's slowly coming up, and these beautiful guys to start our day. They're posing perfectly on top of this mound with their little oxpecker friends. They look as though they are very, very happy up there, and it just goes to show you how long the grass is, even on quarantine, that these guys are standing on top there because they're doing it for safety more than anything else. My name is Tristan. On camera, I've got Theo this morning, and it is a very warm welcome to the northeastern part of South Africa. We are coming to you live, which means that we would love to hear from you, and you can do so on multiple platforms. You can use #WildEarth on Twitter, @FC on the YouTube chat stream, as well as in the comments sections of all the various other places that we broadcast to, and the website itself as well, and we'll try and answer as many questions as possible. Talking about coming to you live, it's not just us here at Djuma that will be out and about this morning. We will be having Pinda joining us, and you'll find that Angus is going to go look around to see if he can find a black rhino, which is always very, very exciting. Tess is going to be looking for the Birminghams at Ingala, and Swalu, Kyle will be going to the meerkats. So lots to look forward to this morning. We're going to slowly bumble our way southwards and east in the hope that we can try and pick up some sort of sign of one of our spotty cats that side. There's a lot of promise, and so hopefully we'll get lucky with them. I mean, we've been getting a hiding from them the last few days, so it'll be good just to get a nice, decent spotty cat sighting under the belt. It's like I say, going through withdrawals now. Isn't that cool with the males now standing on top? It's a beautiful picture, that. And like I was saying, they're using this for safety, so they're trying to get up to be able to see what's going on around this area. Now, of course, I just mentioned that we are coming to you live from all over South Africa, and a lot of you are very intrigued as to what the weather will bring in those various parts of South Africa. So let's take a look.
Good morning and welcome to and Beyond Phinda. We have a beautiful sunrise here this morning, and I definitely agree with Tristan. I think it's going to be a beautiful day here at Phinda too. As the sun rises over the Indian Ocean, we can just see it there through the clouds. Then there's the coastal dune layer, some of the tallest coastal dunes in the world, that has just come up over. The coast from Phinda is only about 30 kilometers away, which really does help give us such a unique habitat here on the reserve. My name is Angus, and behind the camera today we have Glenn. We have also found a pair of elderly buffalo bull, and I think what we'll do, we'll just try and move forward. They just did move away as we started this morning. But here they are, still in line with the beautiful sunrise. Let me try stop so we can catch the sunrise too. Wow. You see how that one just looked up at us as we got a bit closer, but they seem very, very chilled. They don't really mind us being this close. And if you look at their bodies, you can see they're both covered in mud. So it's likely that they spent the majority of last night at some sort of watering hole. And it looks like both of them have just been feeding for the last 15 minutes or so since we've been with them. Hammond, we don't have more buffalo than wildebeest at Phinda. There are quite big wildebeest herds all over the reserve, as well as buffalo herds, but we definitely see wildebeest a little bit more often than we do buffalo, and that's why I say we have more wildebeest than Phinda. More wildebeest than buffalo, sorry. Have a look at this one on the left, his horns as well. You'll see a little bit of mud on it. So often what they do, they'll use mud to get rid of parasites, but they'll also thrash their horns in it. And I know a lot of species of animals, such as nyala and wildebeest, will also do that to make themselves look a little bit more intimidating. And it's interesting to see that kind of behavior now, just because there's not really any animals here that would want to be trying to intimidate. I think this other buffalo bull that he's with, he won't be too bothered by it. Looks like they've formed a sort of mutual relationship. These older bulls are the bulls that would have used to be part of a buffalo herd, and as they get older, younger, more athletic and strong buffalo would eventually kick them out, and then they would have to become solitary or in small groups like this. Look at that one on the right. You can see his tail. You can see his tail stuck to some of the mud on his rump. Just he's still very wet from the mud. Wow. maybe he is trying to intimidate that other buffalo. You see that interaction between them? That was very, very interesting. Sure. So we're going to sit here and just see what these two get up to, but we're going to send you off to someone else. Good morning, welcome to a beautiful morning. Coming to you live here from Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands, where we've got some guinea fowl behaving badly in the morning mist, the morning dew. And well, normally they are quite reliable in the morning when it comes to finding predators, but this morning it seems like they're just hiding in the top of the tree. Hello everybody, my name is Steve Falkman, joined by Paul on camera, and as always, very excited to have you with us. Now, we just want to show you that view again, because with the full moon behind it and the mist, it is really quite a special time. Quite a special scene. It really is a beautiful, beautiful way to start the day. Isn't Mother Nature gorgeous? Well, it sounds like we were coming over to this side of the reserve to see if we could find any lion tracks. We thought maybe these guinea fowl would lead us towards some lion, but it sounds like Tristan has cut some lion tracks in the middle of Djuma. So we might go and give him a hand, because you know, when we find lion tracks in Djuma, we always want to try find out where they've gotten to. And they won't be crossing the river. JP, the moon will be up still for probably another hour and a half at the most before it sinks. Well, essentially, the moon rises 51 minutes later each day. It was full moon the night before last, which means it's 2 hours to 3 hours behind the sun right now. So the sun is rising, which means that 2.5 hours or so after the sun has risen, maybe 3 now because it's the third day, that moon will sink. Plus minus is a few minutes either side of that, of course. Beautiful though. Makes me want to howl. But I won't do that now. I might scare somebody. Now, when a guinea fowl in the top of the tall tree like this, shouting, you almost have to be certain that there's something around. But we can't see anything, can we, Paul? Hang on a second. Go ahead. Okay, come in. Okay, so Tristan is working on those lion tracks. We're going to give him a hand shortly. See if we can find out where they've gotten to, because I say they haven't crossed the river because the river's still very wet, so if they haven't crossed south, they'll still be on Djuma. But let's send you over to Carl in the west, who'd like to say good morning.
Dumela. And what a wonderful morning it is. Taking it very easy at this little watering hole. A very good morning. My name is Carl. Behind camera is Craig. Thank you very much for jumping on board on this wonderful sunrise safari. and we are just enjoying the beautiful and tranquil scene in front of us. Myself and Craig had a discussion that this morning we thought we should go and visit the Makala group. A few days ago, somebody actually got lucky enough and got a glimpse of those brand new pups within the Makala group. And because of the rain that we received on the 26th, that burrow was very cold for those newborn. And Mom, the alpha female, actually decided to bring those little ones out. It was very, very early. Normally they don't see daylight for about 3 weeks. It is very early, but you never know. We might get lucky and catch a glimpse of those little individuals. So that is our POA for this morning. We're going to go to the Makala group and spend some time with them. Well, while we just tap in here a little bit more, let's send you over to Angus.
Welcome back. We are only about 100 meters or so from those two buffalo that we left earlier. We actually left because we spotted these giraffe while we were sitting with them, and just another beautiful scene. You see there's one crossing the road off in front of me now. Looks like a youngish male. And it's actually quite a large herd of giraffe here this morning. So giraffe are quite interesting in terms of their herd dynamics. They form temporary herds, meaning that what they do is they'll be together for a little while, and then they'll split up with no relation or no kind of bond formed permanently with the animals that they were with, and then they could move off and go join a different herd as soon as they find one, or if they do find one. You may find some females and the youngsters will stay together for quite a while, but the kind of teenage females are the equivalent of what a teenager would be, and the males will move from herd to herd. And it's quite interesting here. You'll see that you'll notice that none of them are feeding, and a few of them are actually lying down. That one off to the left, you'll see that just to the right of it and just to the left of it, there's a giraffe in the grass. I always love seeing giraffe lying down. You don't see it very, very often. But it does look like that they are starting to get moving now. It will be interesting to see what the four that are lying down do now that two of them have started to move. Lena has asked how often giraffe lie down. I can't tell you for sure, but I think that at some stage during the night, probably most giraffe will lie down, but they don't lie down for very long. So that's why I say that it's not very often that we get to see them lying down. You can see that one on the right, there's a red-billed oxpecker sitting right at the top of her head. Oh, there's two. So, Marge, they do sleep standing up. And then if they want to rest a little bit better, then sometimes they'll lie down. The reason why they stand up to rest is just because it's safer. If they're lying down, they're very vulnerable. But I suppose that when they are lying down, they probably get to rest a little bit better. And I'd also hazard a guess as to say that when they are lying down, some members of the herd with them will remain standing as lookouts. And if they do seem to see anything, then the other members of the herd will be able to pick up on their behavior, and they'll probably stand up quite quickly. You can see that this one is looking intently at something, and we often use giraffe to help us find predators because they're so tall. They have a very good vantage point, and they're able to spot things that possibly us on a vehicle won't be able to. And how this helps us is that if we see a herd of giraffe and a lot of them are staring in the same direction, it's often a good indication that they've spotted something and they're worried about something. You can see now they're starting to move. Here's a zebra coming through as well. Wow, what a beautiful morning. I think we are going to carry on going and try and find a black rhino. But for now, we'll send you off to another live location.
Why, thank you very much, Kyle. We're just going to check our boundary quickly. We had tracks of one buffalo, and we found him. Grumpy fellow, very grumpy, and he went into the thickets. So we left him. We're just going to go check the western and southern boundary to see if the lion tracks that Tristan's following haven't crossed out. That'll save a fair amount of time. Tristan. I'm just going to drive the western then southern boundary, and I can give you a hand if you just update me where you'd like me to check. Okay, copy. I just left that lone buffalo on power lines going into the block towards Impala Road. I doubt they've crossed the river. Such a gorgeous morning. Such a gorgeous start to the day.
Welcome back. We've actually had quite a funny scene right now. One of the zebra that you can see in shot now was actually just scratching itself on an old dead tree, and it pushed a little bit too hard and the tree snapped and made a loud crack, and all the zebra and the giraffe around all got a very big fright and started running. But everything seems to have calmed down now. I mentioned earlier a lot of the giraffe weren't feeding, and now they're starting to get up slowly as the sun's rising. They prefer not to feed during the hottest times of the day. so that they can hopefully find a patch of shade a little bit later on and rest. What they do when they are doing this, they're not necessarily wasting time, because they are ruminants, which means they regurgitate a little bit of the food that they have eaten throughout the day, and then they re-chew it. So while they're lying in the shade or standing in the shade, they'll actually regurgitate a ball of cud and re-chew it just to make it a little bit finer, and it helps them digest it. Wow, look in front of us. You can see that there's 3 giraffe. They all look quite young. They're not very, very big giraffe. Mark, giraffe sometimes do make sounds, but it's not very often that we do hear them. You can see a couple of zebra moving across now too. Notice all the mud right around their hooves. So since the rain here at Phinda, it's still quite muddy. 2 red-billed oxpeckers sitting on this one's back. You can actually hear that sound of theirs now. A very high-pitched, almost metallic-like sound. So oxpeckers will often help us find big herds of animals like this. Well, I suppose there's not a very big herd, but there are some big animals around here. And the reason being, I mentioned that sound that they make, the red-billed oxpeckers. And if you are out in the bush and you see them flying up ahead and calling and then suddenly diving down, they are most likely diving down to a herd of animals. Because they do feed on, or they feed off of animals, off parasites and ticks that may be lying on animals. It's amazing how quickly things happen out here. Earlier, when we were with them, we've probably been with them for about 10 minutes now. And we're actually almost losing sight of all of them. Let's just move forward a little bit. I think that might help. There's one off to my left, but there is a few more a bit further forward, so I'll keep going. I'll keep it. Let's go back.
Yeah, and some of those Afrikaans like were big for grade 7, bro.
Hello everybody, sorry I'm just discussing something with Tristan. We found tracks of the Pride there coming in. Okay, Corbett, I'll see if I can follow. I'm sure they're going to go to Ballinati's junction.
Yeah, but they turn from Philemon, they turn eastwards. Yeah, towards Ballinati.
Okay, copy. Okay, so always nice to find tracks in the early morning. A whole pride of lions coming in. Tristan reckons it's 2 different prides entirely. So let's have a look, shall we? The Nkuhumas were heading in this direction 2 days ago. The tracks came in just over there. So we're going to have to look very closely. This section of the road is very hard to check. Up ahead a little bit, it gets a bit easier. But if they walked through it, possibly because they were hunting, lots of hyena tracks around. Hyenas up and down, which makes it almost certain that here we go, here they are. Not very easily seen, everybody, but on the road over here, there's a ton of tracks coming in. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it. There are loads of them. Tracks everywhere. There we go. There's a lion track right there. Okay, so let's follow these. Let's go to my favorite lion junction, the area I always check to see where. Oh, well, it sounds like Tristan's doing a lot better than I am in my tracking this morning. Let's go see what he's found.
I don't know if we're doing better. I mean, we've managed to find lions. We've picked up tracks for lions all the way on Quarantine, but it looks like two different groups because there was tracks for a whole pride on Quarantine that was moving off, and then on Weaver's Nest, the tracks for the pride from Quarantine split off, and then we picked up tracks for these guys and a male that was following, it looks like the two Torchwood females, and they came from middle of Djuma all the way south into Chitwa. We've been following them for a long way, so from Quarantine all the way to Chitwa, it's a serious distance that they've walked. But the tracks for the rest of them, I don't know where they've gone. So I don't know if maybe the Telematis have heard something and they've come to try and see what's going on and push these two away. I think it's the Torchwoods, I would imagine, given we've been seeing three lionesses together from the Torchwood Pride on Chitwa, and the way that they've walked straight towards Chitwa tends to indicate, and I don't recognize these lionesses at all. And like I say, there are two here. There's this one that you see there. Those are the feet that we've been following for a very long way. It's been took a long time to get where we needed to go. But anyway, we have eventually managed to find them. The other lioness has walked off into Little Gowrie now, so we don't actually have view of her. There is unfortunately only view of this lioness at the moment, which I'm sure is going to get up and go now too. It's one of those things where it is what it is, you know. We're on the edge of the boundary. I also see tracks for a female leopard here, very fresh, also heading kind of southwards from where these lions are actually sitting. If you look to the left of where the lion is sitting, you'll actually see the tracks for the leopard going underneath the lion's back. So if you go in there and then just go towards her back, you see the leopard footprints going in underneath. Cool, eh? So that's not something you see every day. Here's the track for a leopard underneath the back of a lion. You can see how small it is in comparison to her tracks. If you look in front of her, there's a track for her. They're much, much larger tracks that the lions have. And you can see where the second one was lying. That's all the marks from the second lioness was sitting. She's gotten up and, like I say, moved into Little Gowrie. And this one won't last long. It will eventually go and join its pride member. It's fascinating to see how much these guys are walking around now. You know, we didn't see much of them at all, and then all of a sudden in the last little bit we've been seeing a whole bunch more of these lions. They've been moving into sort of Chitwa, Vessels, Little Gowrie, Nets. They've been doing a lot of, and now it seems like they've even been into Djuma, which is crazy when I think about it. They did walk a lot, that's for sure. I wonder if they were attracted here by this leopard, because there's, like I say, definitely the tracks for this cat was around, and the guys were saying yesterday that they thought there was a leopard on a kill somewhere in this area. They had lots of alarm calls and the tracks going back and forth. So maybe this is for Thandi, it could be for Kuchava, or Sibwe, any of those three. I've seen all three of them on this road before. So it really is difficult to say which one. I'm going to go forward a little bit, just so that we can see her face. All right, so while I try and reposition myself and get ourselves into a better spot, let's send you across to Kyle, who's managed to find himself a weaver's nest.
Well, welcome back to the hustle and bustle of sociable weavers. Everybody's starting to wake up and starting the day. Very large nest, and myself and Craig were just appreciating the strength of this wonderful and very old camel thorn. Think about the rain that we've just received. These nests would have soaked up quite a lot of water. So in frame there, almost to the central part, you can see where the trunk moves up. And just look at that nest, where that nest is, that stem or that branch that's coming off there is supporting a lot of weight. I mean, that section on the left-hand side, that nest is ginormous. Very beautiful. Just sitting here and reminiscing about young school days, especially in my time when I was in grade 7. I went to an all-Afrikaans school, being the only English-speaking person in grade 7. And what we're talking about is rugby, and then obviously my very short, tiny appearance in comparison to which was supposed to be grade 7 boys, which were ginormous. Couldn't believe it. But small packages are dynamite, just like these birds. If you think about these tiny birds and the enormous nests that they create, it is just remarkable. The energy that they expend and the constant need to maintain and rebuild these nests is just incredible. So you need to have a very strong foundation, and this camel thorn provides that foundation to support these ginormous nests. So exceeding a ton easily, these structures. And it is just an accumulation of grass and sticks. Craig, can you get us into that section that you had us on the side of here? Why are they called sociable weavers? Because they love to be together. So their social aspect, this is where they get the common name, a sociable weaver. So a big nest like this can hold 300-400 birds, each pair having their own unique or individual chamber. So looking at the structure over here, you can really see where humans, I believe, where humans got the idea of thatching. If you look at that, obviously thatching in South Africa is a very, very popular and widely used method of creating roofs. It's great for insulation, and that is what these nests have been created for. So warmth in the winter and then cool temperatures in the summer. And if you look at houses in South Africa, that is exactly why you would want a thatch roof. Very expensive though to create, but obviously very beautiful looking, but then also the insulating factor is remarkable. But those items are not weaved. They are not glued with any form of glue. They are literally thrusted into the existing nest. And a remarkable ability and a remarkable thought that all this material is held by this unique formation of weaving. Very, very skillful little birds. There's one in the background that Craig's got it in frame. And their first order of business right now is to emerge from the nest. They would sit in a branch nearby. They would do a little bit of maintenance. Leonard, what does the inside of the nest look like? Okay, let me see how we're going to... So, Craig, could you give us a little bit of an outside view there? So, to explain here quickly, we are looking from the side, and the entrances of these nests, these individual nests, would be from the underside of this nest. So if you think about, if you had to dissect this nest in half, you'll have multiple tunnels leading up vertically for about, let's say at about 20 centimeters, or maybe a little bit shorter, 15 centimeters, vertically into a chamber where the bird will reside, but also where it is a perfect environment to lay eggs and then rear chicks. So from underside, there's multiple entrances leading into multiple individual chambers where a pair would have its own nest chamber that they would breed in. And they also use this to reside. So if you think about in winter when the temperatures drop drastically out here, you could have 4 or 5 birds sometimes stuffed into one chamber. And obviously exchanging body heat is a very efficient way on how you can evade these very cold periods in the southern Kalahari. This year, I think we are going to experience a very cold winter on Tswalu. I don't know if I'm prepared for it, but a very, very remarkable structure, and one that allows these birds to survive within, in this area. So 10 degrees plus, so 10 degrees cooler in summer, and then 10 degrees warmer in winter. So the insulating factor here is remarkable, and which gives the birds the ability to thrive in this environment. So if the explanation wasn't correct, what we'll do is I'll try and find a nest where we can get underneath, and maybe we'll get the camera and give you guys a different angle or different view of this remarkable nest. You can see a few of them flying vertically. Just watch there at the bottom end of the screen, you'll see them come out. Yep, there goes one. There goes another one. And these birds are actively breeding in response to rain. Remarkable. But let's send you over to Tessa to say good morning.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to and Beyond Ngala. It is a stunning morning here on this side, and we've got the beautiful golden sunlight just catching this beautiful golden orb web spider's web. Have a look at that perfect web that she has built in straight circles. Isn't that crazy? It's like perfectly spaced around the web there. So my name is Tessa. I'm going to be your guide this morning here at and Beyond Ngala. Behind the camera we have Sebastian. And this morning we are really appreciating the beautiful sunlight that is coming through. We think we're going to have quite an overcast day. And I think it's going to be a really, really good one for us. We're hoping to find some lions for you later on. But it's actually been stunning. So if you have a look at the web at the moment, there's actually still a lot of dew. And the sun is just at that perfect level at the moment where it's catching so, so beautifully. The grass is still wet, that web is still wet, but you can actually see how she's attached it with these long strings to the top of that tree. It's absolutely incredible, the structure behind this, almost the mechanics of it. And it's an incredibly strong silk. So isn't it absolutely beautiful how well she's orchestrated this? It must have taken a lot of time for her to go up and down. And there you can see as she's making those prominent circles on her web, you can see that she's been going in circles around. Vic, this spider is not of medical significance to humans, so it can bite, but it is not actually poisonous for us. It might just hurt a little bit. But it's not a spider that we need to be particularly worried about for any medical significance. They're actually just, I think, for a lot of people, more scary looking than they are actually potentially dangerous. And you can see she's actually, at the moment, she's busy cleaning her mouth parts. So you can see a little bit of movement there around her head, which is on the bottom side. She's got a very long abdomen. And that little bit of movement that you can see is her pedipalps, which are almost extended mouth parts that she uses to feed and to rearrange. And she's busy cleaning at the moment, waiting for something to come through the middle of that web, maybe a fly or a bee this morning. But you can see how delicately she's actually perched on that web. It almost looks like you can't even see where her legs are touching the web itself. unbelievably beautiful. And that golden light is just catching on that thread of the web. But I think what she did here, if you actually have a look at the structure of the web, it looks like she's almost gone around in a circle and then turned around and come back in a wider circle and turned around on the other side and come back in a circle. So at the tops of where the circle ends, you can actually see where she's almost turned around and kept spinning that web. It's unbelievable. Look at the detail. And it is such a beautiful morning. It's starting to get a bit more overcast now. And she really, really has put a lot of effort into this. So it's interesting to see that she actually doesn't have any males in this web that we've noticed, where all of the other golden orbs that we have seen have had males. Linda, yes, it does look a bit like a tiger spider with those beautiful orange and black stripes on the legs. And I don't know if you can see Linda, but she's actually got spots on her abdomen as well that are so close together they almost look like stripes. But she is very beautiful. She's not the biggest golden orb spider I've seen. If I can put it into perspective, she's maybe 5 or 6 centimeters long, which is 2 inches or so. She's not nearly as big as some of the others, and maybe that's a reason why she doesn't have any males in her web yet. She does look quite a bit smaller than the other golden orb spiders that I have seen. But it doesn't make her any less beautiful. She's busy cleaning something on her abdomen there with one of her legs. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if she's still spinning small parts of this web, making that center of the circle smaller. Because what that pattern does with that circular shape to it, with a gap, or not actually a gap, but the hole in the middle, that it's not circular, it's just that fine webbery in the middle where she's sitting, is it actually gets insects to kind of go into the middle of that gap, because if there's reflecting sunlight, it would not be reflecting in the middle, but it also reinforces the structure around the outside of the web. So if a big insect does fly into the middle there where she is, that reinforced structure that you can see on the right that makes those beautiful circles, that will keep the web strong so that it doesn't break up if an insect flies through the middle. And in the middle there where she's sitting, there's just very, very fine layers of silk that should hopefully catch. She is actually busy spinning there. That's unbelievable. So she's making very small movements, but every now and then you can actually see she's moving her abdomen up and down to the web, and that's when she's attaching little pieces of silk. And it might not be building big structures in the web at the moment, but she might be repairing a small piece of the web, or just reinforcing a small piece in the middle, because some insects might fly through and break through those little finer sections of silk. So that's when she will then reattach and fix things. It's actually amazing to see how strong that silk is. I know that if we accidentally drive through it, or maybe there's some of these longer arms of the web coming towards the road and you drive through it, it actually doesn't break. When you drive through it, it almost stretches around you. So it's unreal to think that it can be so strong. Dear watcher, all spider webs are made of a form of silk, which each spider makes, but they all have different structures, they have different strengths. But spider silk is actually incredibly strong. It's one of the strongest silks that you can get. There, she's busy extending it there, but each spider or each species will have a different type of web that it makes. And then you get some that actually don't have silk webs like these ones. You get some that actually have trap webs. So they might dig a hole like a trapdoor spider, dig a hole in the ground, and they have a much finer silk that they would put all around the bottom, so that if they can feel something walking on their web, they can come out of the trap and pull that insect in. So it really does depend. But it's just beautiful to see how much detail has actually gone into this. Must have taken a lot of effort and energy on her part. And now you can imagine she's built this in a gap between trees, because that's where insects would fly through, because it's open. That also means that there is a danger that she might actually have animals walk through this web, which means then she would have to start all over again if something like a buffalo or even an impala walked through there. Although I actually was thinking yesterday, I haven't actually seen any elephants or buffaloes with a golden orb spider on them. Maybe the golden orbs just move off really quickly. I know I drove through another one yesterday accidentally, and it climbed from my face down onto my feet and then out of the car. And they move really, really fast. So that could be the case, that maybe if something walks through, they just move off very quickly to minimize their chance of being injured. But I've never actually noticed a bigger animal like an elephant walking through one of these webs, although I'm sure it does happen. Maybe we just haven't been in the right place at the right time. But I think it is completely fascinating that she has not a single male in this web. It's the first web I've noticed ever that doesn't have a little male. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to leave the spider to her morning basking in the golden light. And I'm going to carry on and see if I can find the Birmingham Pride a little bit further on at Anbion-Ngala.
For the month of January 2021, we are offering a chance to win a unique Wild Earth expedition to the magnificent Tswalu Kalahari. From the ancient Kortai's Koranenberg Mountains to the southern Kalahari's red sand dunes, Tswalu offers what travelers crave most: space and time. The winner will explore this landscape in a vehicle, on foot, or on horseback, with a chance to go behind the scenes with Wild Earth and of course meet the meerkats. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend at the luxury Motsu Lodge, including flights from either Johannesburg or Cape Town. Open to all Wild Earth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Ross, and I'm a field guide at Anbion Phinda Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on Wild Earth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
Have you been watching Wild Earth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. Wild Earth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live Wild Earth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, there's another big male coming in from our left here. Another big male, look at this. This is the one. Now you're going to see sparks fly, guys. Guys, it doesn't get better than this, eh? Yes, unbelievable. Africa, I love you, eh?
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
On to a bit of breakfast. It's a lovely bull giraffe. All the biting flies, giving him a bit of hassle. Phew, coming quite close. He's about 15 meters away from us, so he's very close. He wants to give you guys a very close and personal view of himself. So we were talking about variance yesterday in cheetah across Africa. So if you look at giraffe, there are, in some circles, they believe that you have a variety of different subspecies in correlation to the pattern and the coat color. And if you look at genetically, obviously we can get an understanding that there are differences between these individuals. And that's where now we are starting to recognize different subspecies of these animals. But with the cheetah that we had a discussion yesterday about, if you look at cheetah across Africa, if you look at the genetic differences between cheetah in Africa, there is very little variation genetically. There is less variation within the cheetah population through Africa than there is through the human races. So very, very flat genetic viability, let's say that. But if you look at Africa and these beautiful animals, there's quite a large difference in some of the coat patterns themselves. If you get the West Africa giraffe, obviously very highly endangered at the moment, the West Africa giraffe, the coat or the pattern would vary considerably to this. Chris, what happened to his ossicones? So he's a fairly mature and old individual. So those ossicones are short and stumpy like that from the wear and tear of male and male combat. This would just be over the years of, continuously using those ossicones and them just worn down. It could also have been because of a bit of malnutrition, that they could have worn down quicker or more than one would expect. The deposit of calcium there in the front of the horns and the back of the horns, as they also calcium deposits to use also for fighting. You see them on larger, older males, very prominently displayed like that. But yeah, they are very, very short and very flat. I've seen this individual a few times, and he's very relaxed with us. He's very close. About, as I said, about 15 meters from the vehicle. Oh. Look at that. Yeah, and so yesterday when that question was asked by one of our viewers, that how many cheetah species are there, I mentioned there might be subspecies recognized, but subspecies wouldn't really be the correct term to be used. There would just be geographical variations. So just in areas you would have individuals looking slightly different. And if you look at cheetah, you can find them across the African continent. Obviously, historically, they would be very widely distributed, but now their habitat is very fragmented due to obviously human activity. Lovely dark patterning, using a lot of neck muscle to bring the neck and head down. And when he relaxes, that neck is pulled up to a 45. Oh, look at all the last flies. It's got to be very frustrating when you can't swat away these biting flies. So those are external parasites, and those guys are able to fly. And what they are just doing is sitting there and lacerating the skin. Some of them can be very host specific. These really do enjoy the large hooved ungulates, and they very rarely would bite. Whoa, you could see all the vegetative matter go down his throat. They very rarely would bite a human, although we have had one or two guys which have been bitten. But I mean, that's over a long period where the animal is sitting there and has just found a great spot. Sure, that is close up. Alrighty, but let's send you over to Tristan and to see what he has.
we're still sitting with these lines. They've gone completely flat inside of Little Gari. Just viewing them from the boundary at the moment. I must apologize. They're actually two of the Nkuhumas. I didn't even recognize this tattered-eared lioness at first. And then when I saw the other one put up her head, I kind of saw that I was mistaken. So I apologize about that. It explains the tracks much better because I was very confused by those tracks. These two obviously split off from the Pride earlier in the day. Or the night, should I say. And the rest of the Pride kind of went more east and these guys went south. Because I couldn't work out how the tracks were together, but they weren't being followed by that other Pride. If it was the Torchwoods, it was kind of bugging me a little bit, but it now makes a lot more sense as to what's been taking place. There's always, I don't know why these two would have split off. The rest of the Pride, like I say, was moving around with them. So I'm surprised that they've kind of gone on their own mission, unless, like I said, there was also a male, unless the male was pursuing them for mating reasons. Maybe these two lionesses are coming into estrus, and that's why we're seeing them on their own. We also might find that the Nkuhumas will go, much like the Telematis, through a split at some point. Big prides, lots of mouths to feed, and tough times at the moment with all this rain. We haven't had huge amounts of prey animals that are easy to find, so not a huge amount of buffalo in the area at the moment. Zebras and wildebeest are not going to be how long the grass is. They're going to be starting to move and trying to get into shorter grass areas. So food availability becomes quite tricky for big prides. And often you'll find, particularly sort of younger lionesses, so litters, previous litters, they'll separate from their moms and start to do their own thing a lot more often. And they might rejoin for a while, and you'll kind of have a very broken system for a little bit, but then eventually everything comes together again. And either they form a pride on that by themselves and they have their own one, or they'll kind of be able to find the food necessary and the pride stays together. But in this area and within the Sabi Sands, very few prides can sustain anything over 10. It becomes leave these guys. There's a few vehicles that want to come here, so we're going to make some space for others. They're also sleeping. If they start to move, then we'll see what happens, but they are heading, well, we're heading into Little Gari. We'll get onto this leopard track and just see what we can find. In the meantime, let's send you across to Ngala.
Sorry, Trigger, I had a crash cut. I had to go live quickly. Please go again. So I am sitting here at Beyond Ngala with a giant legless skink that is currently busy slithering away through the grass. And it's a beautiful, big purplish species. It's actually the largest in the Acontius genus. And a legless skink looks a lot like a snake, but actually it's a skink species, which means it's actually more of a lizard. It's just lost its legs. And it was sitting warming up on the road. It's now moved off into the grass, and I think that's because it's starting to get a little bit more active. We've got some birds of prey that have started to fly around. We've seen a Wahlberg's eagle, and so it might have decided it's time to go back into the grass and protect itself. But that was actually quite a big one, I'd say, at least about that long, which is pretty impressive, and they're very, very thick as well. So it's quite a beautiful species of skink. I actually studied them extensively for one of my theses at university in that particular genus. And they're absolutely amazing. They're actually called a burrowing skink. And that's because if they think they're in danger and there's soft soil, they've got a shovel-shaped snout. And they can quickly bury themselves underground. It's unbelievable. And I think one of my favorite things about that one is the beautiful purple color. I'm sorry we didn't get a better look at it though, but I will see if I can maybe find it again in that long grass for you. It disappeared very, very quickly. But it is quite a beautiful genus to look at. All of the Acontius skinks are amazing. Okay, let's see if we can find it in the grass. Liam, I don't know if this would go for eating a snake, actually. I think it might rather just prefer insects. But you never know. You really never know. This grass is so long at the moment, and it might have already buried itself. But it's a very, very tough spot to be in when something like this just disappears. If you think about a size comparison though, Liam, most of the snakes that we get here at An Beyond are a lot bigger. Where this, it's actually that's its full size, is just over 30 centimeters and quite thick. They can bite, so they do have opening jaws, but not very large teeth, so it would give you more of a fright than anything. But I don't think this one would eat snakes. However, there are other species that would, like monitor lizards. They would eat just about anything, including small snakes as well. That was quite beautiful. But you can see that we're actually starting to get a lot more cloud cover in at the moment. We are very, very overcast, and it's expected to stay like this the entire day, which means that that skink is actually going to have a bit of a hard time getting its body temperature up today. It's one of those animals that cannot regulate its own body temperature and needs the sun to be able to do that. Janet, in essence, yes, I think you could say that it is kind of a lizard that's lost its legs. Evolutionarily speaking, they are a different genus to lizards and skinks, which are still around. But yes, essentially they would have started off probably with legs and lost them over time as their needs changed and they started adapting to the environment around them. That being said, though, there are still things like skinks and lizards, and there's some skinks that have very small legs, some skinks that have no legs, normal lizards which have big legs. And so it just depends. They've adapted differently over time, and they have the same common ancestors, but they're completely different genuses and species now because they've occupied different niches of the environment, different small little areas that require slightly different things. So a slightly different lifestyle, slightly different prey. And so that's how they would adapt when they are kind of moving through time over a very, very large scale. So we're not talking in the last 50 or 100 years. We're talking thousands of years that they have changed like that over time. It's very interesting. I love evolutionary and genetic studies and those kinds of things. I studied that quite extensively at university. I definitely have a thing for reptiles. But more scared of spiders, but reptiles I'm really good with. But that was very exciting. I think what we're actually going to do, I don't think we're going to see the skink again. So I think we're actually going to carry on down the road and see if we can find any of those Birmingham lions. We did actually find tracks of that female that has, I think, the 3 small cubs. I think it's her. And she was heading down towards the front of my vehicle here, going south. So I think it might be worthwhile if we take a drive and see if we can find her. That's what we were actually checking for when I came across the skink warming itself up in the road. Let's see what we can find. Okay, so wish me luck to try and find the Birmingham lioness with the 3 little ones. And I'm going to send you over to Tristan at the dam.
Good luck, Tessa. There you go. There's some luck that's been wished your way. Hopefully you find your Birminghams. We've left those 2 Nkabuma females. Like I said, unfortunately, there's a few vehicles that are heading in that direction, so it's time for us to go. We were with them for quite a while. Anyway, we're going to try to follow these leopard tracks. They came south towards the dam and then turned west by the looks of things towards the open clearing. But I've got to go all the way around because the road that runs on the northern side of the dam that takes you west is completely flooded. So now I've got to do a big loop around the lodge to get to where we're going. And hopefully we'll be able to pick up more signs there of something. I don't know if we will, but we will certainly try. The tracks for that leopard there look pretty good as well. Like I say, which leopard it is, I really don't know. There's 3 different females that walk here. 4 actually, if you count Langa as well. Which means that It's difficult to kind of pinpoint which one it is. It looks slightly bigger than Tundi's, though. I mean, I might be wrong, but it looks a little bit big for Tundi's. My gut feel tells me it's Kuchava, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes, and we'll try and figure it out and pick up whether or not it is her. Hopefully we can find one of them. That'll make life a lot easier. Lauren, what's the hardest thing about tracking? Probably seeing the tracks and understanding the different ways and patterns that animals move. Sometimes tracking is super easy, like these lions this morning was really not difficult at all. It was just follow a track down the road for along the way, but it wasn't hard track. Even on foot, you would have, found those lions no problem eventually, because you just would have walked them as they walked the roads. Something like a leopard, the track now is near impossible to see in this grass. You're going to have to rely on one little soft patch of ground within a grassy area, and the leopard has to walk exactly on that grassy patch. So, seeing the tracks at the moment is probably the hardest part about it. Also, the roads are very hard in places, and that makes life equally difficult. So I think that's it. I think it's the way that your mind has got to start working things out. You've got to start understanding a lot more as to what animal you're tracking, and therefore what movements it's going to make, and where you can start checking and looking. A lot of the time people will start to check or go on a track, and they forget that they may be either tracking a leopard versus, let's say, a cheetah. Two very different ways that you're going to go about that tracking. Cheetah, you're going to track not necessarily on foot, but you're going to try and loop, and you're going to try and check in the direction it's traveling towards open clearings, and you're going to generally be able to find their tracks on the roads heading towards open clearings, whereas things like leopards, they're going to use a lot more kind of secretive pathways and things like that. We know they do use roads a lot too, but they also go onto game paths and thickets and drainage lines. So it's just adapting your mindset to the animal, and then actually being able to see the tracks, which, like I say, sometimes sounds easy, and sometimes it is very easy. Other times it's an absolute nightmare to see tracks. Sometimes you have these days where you just think to yourself, this has got to be one of the hardest things in the world. And then aging of tracks, I think that's also another one that's very tricky and takes a lot of time on tracks to start really understanding aging well. A lot of people will see a track and be like, that looks fresh, but it might not be, and what is fresh anyway? Fresh is not something that was from yesterday. The animal can be way, 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 way beyond where you're going to be able to find them. And so fresh tracks are, in our world, would be during the night now, or fresh tracks would be during the day today if we were on a safari this afternoon. So that kind of constitutes freshness, but working that out is not always that easy. All right, I'm going to just check here quickly. I'm doing a little bit of a roundabout loop to where those tracks went. I'm just checking in case we and the cubs are around. While I do that, though, let's send you across to Steve. I think he's on the tracks for the rest of the Nkuhuma ride.
Thanks, Tristan. Well, we found the rest of the pride, but they're in an area we can't really go to with the car. Got two spurfowl, two different species here, Franklin and a spurfowl. Off of Ingwe Alley, where Tristan said the rest of the pride went to. We went and found tracks in the road, and I followed them in a little bit, but there's no off-road access there at all. It is very, very wet underfoot. It's possible they might come out, though. These birds are sort of indicating that they've seen something quite frightening. But Tristan's right. The freshness of a track is tricky, and especially when the ground is as hard as it is now. There we go, two species, the crested on the left and the Natal spurfowl on the right. We thought maybe they'd seen a pride of lions. That's why they're sitting up in the bush. Have you seen the pride of lions? Pride of what? We're going to go to the next junction with the Pangolin track and where Chela Pan is, and maybe they're going to come out there. They might come out and come and have a drink, but there's lots of water around the tracks they had just before they walked to a small pan. They had a drink, and then they were walking through the wet grass. So they must be really hungry to be moving through the wet grass, but it is what it is. It is starting to warm up a little bit now. Maybe they don't mind it too much, but they definitely came in from the west where we had those tracks on the boundary, and they actually walked through a fair bit of green grass, which is a very good indication that they are definitely hungry and hunting. And the fact that Tristan's found a couple all the way to the south, we've got some of them here. We don't know how many. I definitely saw the cubs. Carl, yes, they are. I think there's 16. There's 9 youngsters. 17. 9 youngsters. And 8 adults. I'm going to have to work that out. I haven't seen them in so long. We've got Purple Eye, Ridge Nose, Amber Eyes, Chela, Young Lioness, Naked Lioness, Yellow Eyes, and I think one more. 7 adults, maybe 8. 7 plus 9 is 16, so yeah, 16 I think is right. Nana, who passed away last year, or was it the year before now? It's hard to say. So, yes, there's only 2 more, but the cubs are a little bit younger by a few months. I'm not sure exactly how many months, but it'd be nice to see them now, to see how much smaller or how much bigger they are since last time I saw them. It's my favorite pride, the Nkuhuma Pride. I've spent a lot of time with them. Justin, it really depends. I mean, the Pride can travel many, many kilometers if they're on the hunt, or if they're doing territorial boundaries, or they can stay in the same place for 4 days, like the Talamati Pride did. It really depends on the weather, on the conditions, and on whether they're hungry or not. There's no like list. Each day lion has to walk so far. They can walk 10, 15 kilometers, or they can just stay right where they are. Obviously, the need to walk, the purposes of moving is to get cubs away from potential rival males, to feed, and to do some territorial boundaries. So other than that, there's no other really need to walk. So if they've got food, or if their cubs aren't under threat, or if it hasn't rained, they need to go anywhere. Okay, so I think those lions might be popping out up ahead in front of us. So I'd like to go and have a look to see if maybe that is the case. While we leave this Natal spurfowl to his perch, we haven't heard any other alarm calls since. Okay, let's move it. Okay, so we just head down the road here, out onto the other side, and see if hopefully our lions pop out.
I hope they do, Steve. I'm sure they will. Like I say, Steve is fairly proficient on tracks, and so he should be able to pick up where they went and able to find them. We just did a quick loop, just checking for Sibuyi's cubs. Nothing here. I actually just want to go back to where I had the last track rather than go all the way around. And there's a reason for it, because yesterday I forgot completely that somebody told me that there was a visual of a leopard and a cub on Chitwa open area. And they thought potentially there was a kill that they were at because they'd gone to drink and they went back the same way they went, but they couldn't see anything. And now that I remember, those tracks are going to pretty much where they described, and so maybe the kill is still there. I didn't actually even check the marula tree that's north of that area, that where those tracks were going. I was so focused on the road and the tracks that I forgot completely. So I just want to quickly go back there and just double check that I didn't miss something. Sometimes happens that you do miss things, and that the tracks have gone to a certain place. Unfortunately there we won't be able to off-road. It's quite kind of low down on the slope, and while it probably is fairly dry, they've asked that we don't off-road too much on chippers, which we have to respect. So it might be long distance view if we do find something, but it'll be a view nonetheless, hopefully. It could be wrong completely. Maybe if there was something, it was stolen by hyenas, and that track was just from last night. That leopard moving around, I don't know. We'll have to just double check. Obviously the lion track was on top of the leopard track and we found the lions, but that doesn't really tell me that much as to where those lions are. Alright, let's slowly bumble back to that area. We're going to get into that area shortly. Hopefully there will be a little bit of luck when we get there.
Welcome back to And Beyond Ngala, everybody. So I found this zebra who is moving rather slowly in the road. And it almost looks like it's got an injury on one of the back legs, although I can't see anything obvious at the moment. But definitely moving very slowly and quite stiffly with the back legs. And it's also quite unusual to have her on her own here. It's a bit odd. And sniffing leaves, that's also unusual for a zebra. Usually they stick to grasses. She is still a really, really beautiful zebra. She's got looking almost stiff on the back route, actually. Got an oxpecker on it. You can see the way it's actually a male, sorry. You can see the way he's walking. It almost looks like he's not really bending the one joint in the back leg properly. It could just be something simple like a strain, maybe running and playing and injured it, or maybe a fight with another zebra. Those oxpeckers are having a bit of a fight on his back. Mark, zebras have strange manes, and I think you mean strange by the way it stands up instead of falling flat, because it helps them protect their neck on the back side, because that's where all the vertebrae are. That section is quite... Oh, straight manes, apologies. They have straight manes to protect their necks. So by that hair standing up and being quite thick, it means that it protects the vertebra down the neck, or the neck bones, because that's something that predators would go for, but something that also zebras would go for in a fight. They might bite or kick each other. And you can actually tell a lot from the mane of a zebra. If it's straight up like his is, it means that he is actually healthy. He's got enough nutrients. But if it's starting to flop over, that usually means that he's not so healthy. So it does tell a lot about a zebra, but any form of hair that is different on any animal is usually there for a very specific reason. And where his mane is, it wouldn't be for fly protection, like his tail would be for flies and pests. On the back of his neck, it would definitely be for protection from predators. It's actually amazing. You can see that oxpecker running up and down his front leg. jumping between the two. And those oxpeckers, as much as they tolerate each other, they might actually even be territorial in a sense over him. They each want to have the best areas for finding ticks on his body. I am finding it a bit strange that he's on his own. So I'm definitely gonna stay here and watch for a little while longer just to see if there is anything obvious with the zebra that might be the cause of that stiffness. But I will send you over to Steve with his own herbivore on his side.
Welcome back to Zoom, everybody. Well, there's no sign of these lions. They're in the middle of this block, and there's just been way too much rain to facilitate any form of off-road driving. And that's okay. That is the way it works. So when we first came along this road earlier, I had a feeling the lions were still in the block because there were no tracks coming out, but there were tracks of a big male giraffe that had been running along this road away from where these impala are. So we thought maybe the lions might hunt again. Who knows? It's starting to get a bit warm. But they're somewhere in this block between us and Ingwe Alley, and I can show you on the map for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll be able to demonstrate where the lions came in. Let me find a little stick. Sticks are always very helpful. Sorry, but let me just grab a stick first. A stick's very handy for looking at the map with. A little bit of grass will do. Okay, so we show you where we found the tracks today, and then we'll show you where Tristan has found his lionesses. Okay, so we had tracks over here, over there, coming up the Triple M boundary, and they cut in, and I lost them over there. They went across somewhere. Tristan picked them up on Quarantine. They came down Philemon's Dip. He followed two lionesses all the way down here, and they went all the way east along this boundary, and he got them here on, I don't know where exactly he is, but he's around Chitwa Driveway. He also said that the tracks came in over here, Ingwe Alley, and we found the lions right there. So that we're stationing over there at the moment, so there's somewhere in between here. There's a drainage system running through. The other morning or afternoon, you might have seen me doing a segment in the river, sitting down underneath the tree. That was sitting right over here. So they're in here somewhere, and it's very wet, it's very thick, but I definitely saw them. At least one adult and a number of youngsters that moved away. Thank you, Paul. Kylie, I found the morning much easier to track. Invariably, what happens is because of the conditions, the animals that we're looking for are moving around in the morning or at night. So there's a fresh little coat of fresh applied newspaper in the morning. But then in the afternoon, animals will start to move again, especially in the winter months. So you can do both, but in the middle of the day, tracking is very hard because the angle of the sun makes the tracks very hard to see. But this time of year, with all of this rain, the ground is very hard, which makes it's like standing on concrete, trying to track animals over a concrete floor. Very difficult. Hoofed animals are easier because they leave an indentation on the ground, whereas lions, if they walk on the hard stuff, you wouldn't even see lions. Where do you see lions? He's a beautiful fellow, isn't he? Look at those magnificent horns. They call them lyrate. They look like a lyre. You can put some strings between them, make a beautiful musical instrument, the lyre. He's a prime impala ram. He will be in the top rung of the breeding this coming season. And he hangs out here with his other friends. And when the times are suitable, he will then claim his territory. Justin, impala's eyes, I think, are dark in color. They might be dark brown, I'm not actually that certain. Let's have a look, shall we? I think they're brown, but they're not light. You can hear the orange-breasted bushshrike. Oh, they're dark. Dark, dark, dark in colour. A time to be building up condition. Time to be getting strong. Hanging out with his friend over there is to his benefit and his friend's benefit. One of them can look, while the other one feeds. Always ready to launch off the first sign of danger. No doubt they've encountered the lions this morning. Indigo girl they are, aren't they? Gorgeous looking animals. Such good condition. Impala always look good though, my opinion. Always look very healthy. Their ability to mix feed really adds a huge benefit to them. The coat is always so shiny. Okay, well, another animal that is under risk of predation at this time of year, and Tessa has still got some zebras.
Speaking of that predation, welcome back to An Beyond Ngala, and I've actually noticed that this zebra that we can see in front, now that we found the rest of the dazzle from that other male, has actually got quite a chunk that's been taken out of its rump. And we can kind of see it just in the shape, but as it turns there, you can see there's actually a hollow in the rump, and as it turns, you can actually see a bit of the scarring where it's come out. It also seems to have lost a little bit of its tail, which means that maybe there was a bit of a fight between zebras, but I think what might have happened was maybe a lion didn't quite get as lucky as it thought, but still got a chunk of this zebra when it was maybe a bit younger. But it's actually quite unusual to see such an obvious difference in the tail especially. So you can almost see how the back right, the one closest to us, that cheek or the rump, has got a hollow out of it. There you can see it very well in that light. Almost looks like a perfect bite mark. Nola, zebras will groom themselves using a few different methods. Sometimes they might groom and scratch each other, which is called allo grooming. But they will also do dust bathing, where they find a nice patch of sand that's loose and they roll in it to clean their coats and get rid of all the pests. And they actually do also scratch themselves on trees. They might occasionally use their teeth or their mouths to scratch pests and insects off. And so it really does just depend. They also use the rain, but it just depends zebra to zebra where they are and the habitat that they're in at the time. But zebras are actually quite social, and so you might find that they would groom each other. What's also unusual about this dazzle, it seems to be about 6 zebras together that were hiding out of the road while we had that male in the road. it seems like half are male and half are female. And that's quite unusual because normally there's only one stallion within a desert of zebras, and the rest of them would get moved out. But what you might find happened here is because there's so few of them, they've decided to stay together. They might have a dominance issue when it comes closer to mating time. But it is definitely unusual. Definitely unusual to see 3 males and 3 females. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these zebras to enjoy that beautiful fresh green grass this morning. And I'll send you from my stripes over to Tristan, who's finally found his spots.
Well, finally, it's only taken, I don't even know how long to find these two, but we've managed to find them. We got some nice tracks and then eventually kind of picked them up. But I thought I'd get a better view from here, but it's not the case, and I can't off-road here, so I'm going to actually just go back and round. They're both lying up here. It looks like Tandy and the cub. We've seen 2 leopards, so I'm going to just double check that it's them quickly. But they've been going up and down all over the place, these two. So it took a while just to kind of figure out exactly where the tracks were going and which way to head. There's Mom. Now, where's the cub gone? I saw him just now. He was lying on a rock as well. So let's just go there. I don't know. There's a herd of elephants around, so he's probably up to no good trying to find the ellies and trying to just kind of watch them and generally play games. There we go, sitting on the rock, which is what we had been hoping for yesterday at First Rock, is that we would find them on the rocks, but they've moved south again all the way to where we are now. And they are kind of surrounded by ellies, so I hope the ellies don't chase them, because where they are is a very difficult area. There's not much I can do because the riverbed itself is still flooded, so we can't go down into the riverbed like we were the other day. And obviously this is a spot that both Tandy and the cub are absolutely loving these days, and it's crazy to think that a few days ago we had Kuchava and her cub on this same very rock. It's a weird kind of thing to have these leopards using the same area. I'm saying it's Tandy, but I didn't even actually check properly. Looks like her though. That skull of her. That find them though. It's been a long few days of just looking at leopard prints in the sand, up, down, all over the place. And we've had so many times where it's been so close to finding them, and we haven't managed to find them. That today it feels good that we've managed to get them, and that they're in a spot where for now they're sitting and we have a really nice view of them. Even though it's quite rocky here, I mean, it's so close to the drainage line that it's probably still quite wet. So not a place that we could move off-road too much. The cub was lying to the bottom right of where she is. There's like a sloped rock, and he was there. I don't know if maybe, like I say, he's moved a little bit to go and see if he can find out what these ellies are up to. We know that he's quite a curious little fella at times and likes to move around and just sort of generally cause trouble, which is pretty typical of most little male cubs. They're all in a very similar boat in terms of their naughtiness. Everybody say it's a beautiful scene or she's a beautiful queen. I didn't hear which one, but either or, they both are aptly applicable to what we see right now. I mean, the fact that they kind of sitting on this beautiful rock, it's something that, like I say, we don't see a lot of normally here in the Sabi Sands, or this part of the Sabi Sands. There's not a huge amount of rocks. In fact, this Mulawanini system is the only system where we see rocks like this in our traverse. This goes all the way up to First Rock. It's the same little drainage that runs north-south. So we don't see a lot if you know, the rocks, if it's not on these areas, then we don't see them very often on the rocks. So it's always cool to get her, and then she herself is just a beautiful individual. individual. There's the cub now. You see the little face poking out. It's ridiculously cute, that little one, and he's become so chilled. I have thoroughly enjoyed spending quite a bit of time with him of late. You know, prior to the cyclone, we were getting days and days and days with this little guy. We were having the best time watching him and his mom go about their business. But isn't that cool? The two of them sitting on the rock together. Hey guys. Very, very, very cool, in my opinion. You two have given me the runaround. I'm so glad we found the tracks though, and then from there it was just a matter of checking them and following them. So, Fat Cat, you're asking what's the difference between a leopard and a cheetah? Well, quite simply, they have different spot patterns is the easiest way. If you look at them side by side, it's immediately noticeable. One has a solid round spot, so looks like little polka dots on its coat, and the other one has a spot that looks like it's exploded and is popped open, and so it's got this little like caramel middle with these little black markings around it, and those are called rosettes. So one is spotted, one is rosetted. So that's the most immediate difference that you'll notice. The other differences are body structure. Cheetah, tall, long, slender. Leopards, shorter, stockier, more well-built, more muscular. Built for power game rather than the kind of the speed game that cheetah are built for. Now, habitat often is varied, so you find these guys more in dense, thicker areas along drainage lines and riverbeds, whereas you find cheetah more in open clearings a lot of the time. So that kind of is the easiest ways to differentiate between them. The face has also got a really nice difference. If you look at the face, it's on a cheetah, it's got these two black tear marks that run from the eyes down around the nose and down to the muzzle, whereas the leopard, as you can see from this picture, doesn't have that. It lacks those little tear marks. Well, you guys are a sight for sore eyes, I will say that. Can't actually believe that they're here. Sure, rough. Like I say, I think they more than any of the other leopards have given us the most runaround. I mean, we've had tracks for them for 4 drives now, so I was starting to get PTSD from tracking them and then not delivering, and I was thinking that maybe you guys would stop believing that we're actually finding them on foot. So I'm glad that we've actually got a view this morning. It's getting roasting hot, so I doubt that they're going to go anywhere. They both look like their tummies are fairly full. I don't think there's too much movement that's going to take place. You can't sit still, can you? You're going to come and rub up on Mom. Oh, look at that. Isn't that cool? Then how often will leopards sleep on the ground rather than in trees? I really wish that leopards didn't spend time in trees sometimes, because it brings about this question all the time. Everyone always thinks a leopard is in a tree, and they are in a tree maybe, I reckon, 10% of their life. The other 90% they're on the ground. So the answer to your question is more so than they do in a tree. If you watch this show for any extended period of time, you'll notice that our leopard sightings mostly are on the ground. Every now and then we get lucky and we'll have a leopard in a tree, and particularly now because the grass is long and it's summer and it's wet and the leopards are getting up and out of that grass a lot of the time. But for the most part, these guys are spending their time on the ground. They are not animals that are always in the tree. A tree is a safety point, and it is a point to store food in order to eat it at leisure. That is mostly what a tree is for a leopard. It really isn't as arboreal as everybody gives it credit for. They are arboreal cats, and they do climb very well, and they do it, but they're not this cat that just lives in a tree all day long and never does anything else. I wish that they did, because it would make it much easier to find them. We would see them a lot more if they were in trees, as much as everybody believes that they are. All right, I'm going to try go around again. Let's see if we can get a better view from around. it depends where they go. If they stay on the rock, there is actually a little rock shelf that I can follow and maybe get a little bit closer without having to worry too much about a soft area. Like I said, the shelf runs across here somewhere. Let's go forward a little bit. We should. This grass is getting long. A few days ago, you could see here perfectly without even worrying about the grass. It wasn't in any way, shape, or form bad, but now, the length of it, it's crazy. You can actually see the little male. When he goes into the grass, he just disappears completely. And there's the good old Tundi smile that he's getting from mom because he's being boisterous. See how he goes into the grass and gone. So yesterday, that's exactly what was happening. All we were getting was him. When I walked into him, was that visual right there, and then just a bounding tail and gone. You won't find them if they don't sit on prominent structure that is above the grass. And these rocks are the perfect example of what prominent structure above the grass looks like. Much, much, much better than, when they're in it itself. And termite mounds, trees, rocks, they're all going to be vitally important over the next 2 months for finding these cats. You're not going to find them really in this long grass unless you spot them on an elevated structure or prominent structure, and then they come down from there. She's very intrigued by something across from her. Shall you say Tundi is your favorite? I think you and many, many, many others, Michelle. I know there's a lot of you that are Tundi fans, and so I can't say that I'm surprised. She is an absolutely exquisite leopardess, very successful. She's got feistiness to her. She's produced a number of beautiful cubs. Obviously Columba being one of them. She's got the most beautiful eyes. Tamba, who just happens to be my favorite male leopard. He's also, if it wasn't for his little ear getting half taken off, he possibly would be the kind of supermodel of the leopard world. Even with his little half ear, which adds a little ruggedness to him, he's still a really good looking cat. So she always produces beautiful cats. So yeah, she's a wonderful leopard and a really good mom. It doesn't look like it now as she growls and hisses and makes a noise at her cub, but actually she really is good with her cubs. Her track record and her ability to protect them only serves to prove that notion. She really has done so well to raise the cubs that she has, and she's very clever, this cat. She's able to move and shift them around as and when she needs to in order to make sure that she keeps them safe. I hope she doesn't go down into the river bed, because that's going to make life very tricky. What we can do is if they move around the rock a little bit, which I don't think they will because of the sun, it's very hot outside of the sort of shady areas, and so I think she's going to stick on this top section of the rock. But if she does move a little bit, we can go to the opposite bank, and we'll be able to get a view from there if they go the other side of this tree. But if they drop down into the riverbed itself, then unfortunately that's going to be the end of the sighting. We can't access that riverbed at all. All right, well, we're going to sit with these two because, well, why not? I mean, we have our two cats that we've been looking for, and I'm super excited. It looks like they're actually going to go on the move. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Carl with his meerkats.
Well, a good morning from the Rockstar meerkat colony. Everybody has come out to greet the sun and to say hello. Everybody looking good and healthy. And everybody just using high ground through this first period, just to ensure there's nobody here. The juvenile is looking very healthy and looking strong. Kelly, no, this is not the largest meerkat group. There are groups that are larger than this. There's only 8-9 individuals here. This is about an average size group in the early stages of group development, let's say that. Typically you'd find group sizes being between 8 and about 12, 8 and 14 individuals. And then very large groups can be 20, and then very large groups up to 30 individuals within a group. But when you are in a smaller group like this, communication is a lot easier, staying in vocal communication with clan members. So as the group grows in size, communication then becomes hard for these individuals, and that's where individuals could be caught off guard and unfortunately taken out. And so this group over here, we haven't visited the rock stars for a little while, and it's good to see that they are all healthy and thriving, especially the young, because the young, and it's a very tricky period being a young meerkat. Before you've learned the ins and outs of what it means to be a meerkat, you are caught here and there by predators, and snakes, other forms of mesocarnivores, and then as well as aerial attacks would be the main threats for young. But everybody looking good, having their morning dose of sun, and this commences for about 15, it ranges between 15 and 25 minutes. Yeah, those eyes are deeply set, and they've got a dark ring that runs around the circumference of the actual eye, and that is to aid these animals in their daylight activity. So if you think about how deeply the eyes are set and that dark ring around the eyes, those dark rings actually work in the same manner or principle as sunglasses, eliminating glare. Because they are diurnally or daytime active, you won't find a meerkat out under the cover of darkness unless it is of vital importance to exit the burrow. You will not find meerkats operating under the cover of darkness. So daytime is when they're operating, and those deeply set eyes with those dark rings around it give them obviously the ability to be moving out and about here through the daylight period and not having to deal with the glare. And the facial features are very different from individual to individual. Over a period of time, when you start looking at meerkats, especially one specific colony, you can actually recognize individuals from the facial or skull structure. Each individual has its own unique skull structure, and one can start recognizing it. It is very tricky. I sometimes battle even to this day and age. But one can recognize individuals like that. Oh, you're in the firing line there, buddy. So from the activity last night of all the members going down into the burrow, they would have taken quite a lot of soil with them. And now early morning you want to make sure that that soil is removed and that burrow entrance is open and clear of obstructions.
How insane is that animal?
This is out of this world. Fantastic. Good, Mama.
Wow, what a way to start off.
Just such an incredible privilege to be out here. It just keeps on delivering.
There you go, there you go. Heart is pumping right now.
3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Look at this, everybody. We've got a live kill.
The croc is holding the tail. It's holding tight. Lucky wildebeest.
there's nowhere to go. This is a disaster in the making.
This is the first leucistic zebra I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, here comes a lion. Run, little guy. Go on.
Something that I have never seen before in my entire life that you are now watching live.
My heart is in my mouth, everybody.
Look at this. It's gonna make it. It's going, it's going.
This is just too magical. Hi, little guys. That's great, isn't it?
Is it just pretended to be dead? That is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Look at that. Scuba Steve has got a friend.
You've got a friend in me.
It couldn't be a better morning. This is just too special.
Oh my goodness, we've got a turtle.
How epic is the fact that we're coming to you live on the Chobe River? It's the most incredible feeling to be here. This is live and we're in Rwanda. This is a very, very different adventure, charged with emotion.
Look at that little zebra about to be born. There's the head. Oh, you clever mare. Well done.
I did not think I would ever face my fears like this.
So ensuring that the burrow entrance is free of debris is obviously a very important aspect when you need to enter that burrow system very, very quickly. Obviously, being underground, you had a bit of a safer, you had more of a safer environment underground, because there's not a lot of things that will follow a meerkat into those burrow systems. The little one on the far left, they're falling asleep. So early morning, you do have individuals that are still very, very snoozy. And you can see from the body posture and activity that some of them actually do nod off. I've actually found a few of them nodding off and actually falling forwards and tumbling down. Victoria, can meerkats blink? Yes, they can. And if Craig can get us nice and close, I think we are a little bit too far. But if you see, let's just see if we can see here quickly. They've actually got a specialized membrane called the nectating membrane. So obviously blinking is a very important function to remove debris from the eye, but then also protecting the eye itself. But the nectating membrane is almost like a membrane or a lid or a layer that is an extra form of protection. So yes, they can blink, and that nectating membrane will then be seen across the eye. They're very good at staring competitions. Whoa! Look on the far left, they create their females pregnant. The female on the far left, you can see the extension of her belly. It's quite distended. In the early period of pregnancy, her belly is not bulging, so she is just in the early stages of this pregnancy. And through favorable periods, we can have a female giving birth to 3-4 litters a year. Obviously better suited when you have all the available resources around you to have multiple litters. But if it is a very tough year, they will not have a litter a year because it is just too risky. Whoa, big dung beetle. It's too risky if you don't have the resources available. And I've actually seen meerkats abandon their pups because of lack of resource in the given area.
Well, we've managed to somehow scrounge out a view of these cats in amongst the undergrowth. We came around to another little road that's on the eastern side, as I was saying, of the drainage line, and we've managed to somehow, like I say, get a view of some spots through the thicket. I'm hoping that they're going to move a little bit and we'll get them kind of a little bit more out in the open than what they are at the moment, given that it's pretty much just spots behind some leaves for now. With the cub being as vociferous as he has been this morning and moving about, I'm thinking that maybe, just maybe, we're going to see him irritate Mom enough for them to move and for us to be able to get a decent view of them. If we had the river that we could drive, I mean, we would have a 5-5 view of these guys, but unfortunately they're lying between the river and the thickets, and the river itself is still flowing, and so that will just be a suicide mission for Rusty. Poor Rusty would be up to its axle in soft sand if we drove in there now, which we're not going to do at all. We're going to rather stay on the bank, and we'll have kind of blurred spots for now. Not blurred spots, but obstructed spots for now. Eventually, I'm sure these two will move and come out. I think they're going to rest here for the day. I don't think we're going to see them move too far from this area. There's water, there's ample shade, it's getting hot, their tummies are fairly full, and so I expect that both of these guys will stay here. That's the cub that you're seeing now, I think. I mean, I'm battling to see on my screen because of the glare, but it looks like maybe that's the cub. Mom was also down here with the cub. They were both together at one point, so I'm pretty sure she's just lying up. I was hoping they were going to go lie down in the riverbed. There's actually a sandbank that's developed that you can see from the road, and it looks like this beautiful cold sand, so I would have thought that they might go lie there, but maybe it's just a little bit too damp still, and when they actually stand there, maybe the water seeps up through the sand. You know, sometimes sand can look like it's okay, and then when you stand there, it's this kind of slow rise of water as the sand is displaced, and maybe that's what's happening at the moment, and that's why they're not actually sitting in the sand itself, but rather on the bank of the Mulawanini. But you can see now how everything out here is a game of chance and luck. And you'll find that with these guys, I mean, if you look at this sighting now, if you drove here, the chance of you seeing this would be near zero. I mean, that's very zoomed in view of this leopard. If you come out, its spotted pattern is blending in better than you can imagine in those shadows. You're finding that you've got, you know, kind of that lighter color with those black spots, and how that blends in with the environment and with the area is really makes them tricky to see. And it's why we've been struggling a little bit in finding them. You've got to just right time, right place, and we got lucky that they were out in the open and we could spot them from quite far a little bit earlier. Otherwise probably wouldn't even have the sighting, and that's a 5-minute difference that we're talking about. Tyler, do leopards mark their territory? Yes, they mark their territory. These cats basically will walk along, lift their tail, and they'll urinate, particularly on the sides of roads and game paths, and that's a chemical signature that they're leaving behind for other animals to know that they're there. On top of that, you then have defecation marks, so they'll defecate, which is, you know, poo basically, on pathways or roads as well, again leaving a scent trail. And then the other way that they mark territory is by audio. So they will call, they'll have a rasping, sawing sound, and that call will indicate to other leopards that there's a territorial individual in the area. So a few ways that they do it. And also, I suppose they rub their face on bushes too. That's also a chemical signature that's left behind. You can hear there's a little, I think it's a little long-billed crombec that's alarm calling at this guy at the moment. It's not happy that there's 2 leopards sitting here, I don't think. It's pretty upset, but hey, look at that camouflage. Isn't that amazing? I always think it's incredible to see how well camouflaged these guys are. This little piggy, so males are basically double the size of females when they're fully grown. Most female leopards that we see in this area are going to weigh around 40 to 50 kilograms or around 100 pounds. That's roughly where the females sit. Whereas the males, they can get as much as 95, 97 kilograms, over 100 sometimes. So they pretty much double what the females are in weight. In terms of actual size and measurements of their bodies, they will be considerably larger. I would say at least 40% larger in terms of their sort of height, head size, length. They're much bigger animals in general. So you can see with this little one, he's already the same size of mom, and he's not even a year old yet. So he's still got lots of growing to do, but yet he's almost the same size as her in her adult form. They really do get a lot bigger. Their size is quite something when you actually see them as fully grown big adults next to females. It's very difficult to give people a sense of size until you actually see the differences between them. I remember the one day I actually had Anderson, and yes, Anderson was one of those kind of 1%ers, if you want to call it that. It was this leopard that was able to grow much larger than some of the other leopards in the area. And I had him mating with Moya once, which is a female from the southwest. And he was sitting down in the drainage line, and she was walking past him, and the top of his head when he was sitting was the same height as her walking. So that gives you an idea just how much bigger he was than her. It looked actually weird. It looked like this monster next to this tiny little female, and even when they mated, he kind of just dwarfed her in so many ways. So the males are a lot bigger, and the kind of bulk of them is also quite something. So we have that to look forward to with this little fella. I think he's going to be a big boy. He's got nice big feet. His tracks are already way bigger than his mom's. You can tell them quite clearly apart already. He's a much bigger, rounder track than what she's got. And even Kuchava, his track, her little son, his track is also nice and big already. So big feet, big ears, often they grow into it. We think that he is from the Muluwati lineage, which is not a small leopard either. I haven't spent a lot of time with Muluwati, but I have seen him enough to know that he's not tiny. He's a fairly decent sized individual, and so he will have passed on some good genetics. And Thandi always produces beautiful boys, very stocky often in her lineage. So I'm sure he will be an absolute showstopper. He's already relaxed a lot more, so wherever he goes, they're going to inherit a really good leopard. I really don't think we're going to see, these young boys spending much time in the areas that we traverse. They might distribute into somewhere where we see them a little bit more, but chances are that they're going to, by the time they reach 2.5, 3.5, I think we're going to see them moving on. Thankfully, that's only, in a year and a bit's time for pretty much all of our young boys that are around at the moment. Sibui's little male, and this one and Kuchava, they all kind of got a fair amount of time left still in the area. I'm hoping one of the young boys ends up coming onto Djuma. Nice when we have one close to camp. Becky, so the most that I know of is 4, but on average 2. The most I've ever seen myself with a leopard is 3. So I've seen photos of leopards with 4 in the wild. So we're not talking about any sort of captivity or breeding program, because sometimes that can be influenced by hormones and all kinds of things. But 4 in the wild is the most that I've ever seen photographic evidence of. But firsthand, 3. I think there was a report, actually, I might, hang on a second. I remember having a conversation with somebody at the end of, was it last year or middle of last year, where they said that they had photos of a leopardess with 5. But I don't think I saw those photos. I can't remember now, actually. But I've definitely seen of 4, which is amazing. Imagine that poor leopardess to have to raise 4 cubs. It must be an absolute nightmare. Also, from a food point of view, it would be, I mean, if she has 4 boys, just can you imagine this? 4 males. By the time they reach a year old, she's basically feeding 4 adult female leopards, which is a serious amount of food. It is no joke to find that much food. And, that would just become near impossible, I think. That's why we often find that, leopards litters of that size don't really do well. I haven't seen a female raise more than two independents in quite a while. It does happen, but it's been a while since I've seen it, and personally haven't actually seen it happen at all, where all 3 have made it to independence. I'm hoping when Tlalamba has her little ones that maybe we can get a little 3 prize from Tlalamba. That'll be nice. But I reckon her first litter is only going to be 1. I have this feeling. Maybe it'll be 2, I don't know. But I'm going to hedge my bet on just 1 to start with. But I think she's going to be a good mom. I think Tlalamba's going to be just like her mom. She's going to be sneaky. She's going to understand the value of keeping her cub hidden. She's going to be able to figure out a way to move him around or her around. I think she's going to do really well. And she's laying some really good foundation work at the moment, is little Tlalamba. She has moved her way around all over the place. She's sent marks everywhere. She's definitely carved out a beautiful little territory for herself that seemingly no other leopards are even rivaling or challenging her with. And that's why, I think she'll be successful. It's just going to really depend on the boys as to what happens. Is Tingana going to stick around for much longer? Mulawati, does Nhlangula come further south? This young male that's hanging around Buffelshoek, does he start to become a feature of the landscape? Do we see Hukumuri coming back? These are all kind of things that can happen. Does a new male arrive? We often see it. We get distribution of leopards and new males arrive, and we end up with a different kind of situation. So there's a lot going to ride on that side of things for her to raise cubs successfully, but I think she's got all the tricks of the trade, and the way that she is able to be elusive towards vehicles when she wants to be will stand her in good stead with being elusive with her cubs when she needs to be. So I think she's going to be just fine. I think she has been sort of learnt well from mom, which is going to only be good for us in the future.
Yes, well, once again, well done, Tristan. You were determined the last couple of days, and you have found them. So well done for doing that. So we've moved out of the area of the lions because, well, we couldn't see them from the road, so we'll come back later. I know exactly where they are. They're sleeping in the shade. Well, we assume they are sleeping. We're going to come up towards the north and the west towards where we were originally headed to follow up on the activities of the Telemati Pride from last night. The landowners in the north said that the tracks were around Sydney's. So we're going to go and see if we can maybe find where they got to. If they came in, maybe they'll be looking for that lone buffalo we had this morning. They're always very grumpy on their own, lone buffaloes. There you go, some birds for you there. Lovely long-tailed shrikes. Might be some alates emerging from this termite mound.
You can see maintenance is definitely the first order of business at the moment. And the one on the right is actually digging and displacing soil straight back into the hole, but then right over another meerkat that's at the burrow entrance. It's very entertaining to watch these guys in and around the burrow entrance. Antoinette, very, very good question. What does it mean when meerkats forage? So forage is a word we would use to describe or explain when an animal is out looking for food, when it's out busy scratching around, turning rocks, looking in the ground, looking under logs, when it is busy looking for food over a certain period of time, when the animal is foraging. So these meerkats will go foraging in the next 10 or 15 minutes, and they will be foraging throughout the whole day. And they'll be foraging, looking for insects, so little beetles, the larvae of beetles, you name it, termites. They eat a variety of tiny little insects that they will unearth with their long claws and very good ability of digging. They really have a remarkable ability for digging. So meerkats forage throughout the day, and you would find that in winter it is also a very, very hard and tedious job. I mean, as you consume a prey item, then you need to start digging for the next prey item. And using their noses, they've got a very acute sense of smell that guides them to where these prey items are within the soil. Very strong sense of smell. I mean, smelling an insect that might be 20, 30 centimeters buried beneath the soil, I find absolutely incredible how this animal's nose can basically guide it to that prey item. See, they're watching the birds fly overhead and recognizing which birds are threats and which are not. Do meerkats normally climb trees? Yes, they do. Shortish trees they would climb up into to gain a bit of height in order to search for a potential threat. They can use fallen logs, they can use termite mounds, and they are quite skillful going up these shortish shrub-like trees to gain a bit of height. But coming down is a very tricky task for them. Obviously, the way their claws are designed they are fixed on the front of their digits. So going up, the claws can aid them in a bit of climbing into these higher points. But coming down, the claws would be a hindrance or an obstacle for these little animals. And I've had many a good laugh. Unfortunately for the meerkat, might sound a little bit harsh, but I've had many a good laugh of watching a meerkat come down from a high point. And you'd find that getting a bit of height advantage, and especially through a period now, is very, very important. Because a meerkat is not a very tall animal, and you can see it using its tail, standing on its hind legs, and using its tail to balance itself. So almost standing upright like us. And that gives it a little bit of a height advantage. But if you can increase the height to scan much, much further, that is a very, very, very big advantage in order to see an African wildcat or a bird of prey. We are going to be moving off now. You can see two individuals have moved off to the right-hand side, and this is where this colony will start off now for their days of foraging. And they might return to this burrow this afternoon, or the alpha female might decide to take them to another beautiful, humble abode. They have been here for the past few days. I can see from the extensive excavation that has taken place here that they have been using this burrow for the past couple of days. But then they can change it from a day-to-day basis, and then they will be locked to a burrow if they have pups, just like the Makalo group. They are locked at that burrow system, which we refer to as kotoko, and they will not move out of that burrow system now for about 3 weeks. So it makes it really easy for us to find them, but it's a very, very safe haven for those new little individuals. And off we go. You can see as they run, as they go onto their all fours, the tail is then vertically erect, and that tail is used as a beacon. So you can see where your group members are through this very, very thick ground cover. I mean, look how they disappear. Look at that. Wow. So definitely a big advantage to keep them concealed, but also it is a very, very dangerous thing right now, because a small predator could also be hiding in this growth and could quickly grab hold of one of these little meerkats. But vigilance is key here, and look at that. They absolutely get lost in the sea of grass. All right, they have moved off. We're going to send you off to Tristan, and we will see you guys back this side.
Well, not much has changed. Unfortunately, still a very difficult visual at the moment of these cats, but I don't suspect we're going to see too much difference in what happens this morning, unless the sun catches them like it is now, and it kind of gets a little uncomfy. They might get up and move. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure that they're going to stay here all day. We will find both of them here this afternoon. It's nice though that we can just hang out. You got to be patient sometimes with this, because they will move again and they will find a sort of spot that they'll be a little bit more out in the open. It's just going to take a few minutes, or like I say, maybe even this afternoon. But it's just worth being here and waiting for that to happen. For now though, I suspect that going to find is the little boy has decided he's going to nap. But if he wakes up, that's going to trigger Tundi probably to be, again, quite grumpy and snarl and hissy, and she'll move maybe to go and lie in her own little spot. Often with her, she kind of puts a little bit of distance between her and the cub, so she'll go and lie 20 meters away, 30 meters away, and he'll eventually get bored and then goes and irritates her, then she gets up and moves again, and that's pretty much how it goes most of the day. And so the chance of them coming out into the open is not bad. We might get a fairly decent look at them at some point. I mean, it's not like we didn't just now. We'll just sit here and enjoy it. It was also nice because there's birds along this little drainage line. I've been thoroughly enjoying a long-billed crombeck that's been bouncing around all over the place. There was a kingfisher that flew past just now. There's lots to look at besides a few spots hidden in a very, very dense, thick area. Amazing how they sit motionless like that. Like I say, if you were just to walk past here or drive past here, you would have zero idea that these guys were here. It looks so innocuous from my perspective. I mean, if you see it on the camera, you can see it quite clearly, but from the perspective that I have, it's really amazing to see how well they actually blend in, and we must drive past them more than we even realize. All right, sounds like Steve's got something in the road, so let's quickly send you across to him.
Well, thanks, Tristan. Well done indeed. We have tracked down the hardest animal to find at the water, a buffalo bull. See, the hippo laughed at that joke. Hippos here as well. But the buffalo, quite often what happens with buffalo, if they are threatened or chased by lions, they often go into water. It is one of their sort of fail-safes. If they're injured, something they do as well, they go into the water. Obviously, you need to have a very big crocodile around to sort out a big buffalo bull like that. And I'm not certain this is the same fellow we saw earlier this morning. He doesn't look injured in any way, but maybe he's just trying to cool off. But one of the landowners did have tracks of the Telemates in this area this morning, and we were on our way here to follow up when those guinea fowl got our attention. Then we spent time with the guinea fowl, and then the tracks that Tristan had piqued our interests, because Nkuhuma Pride on Djuma is always something I love to follow up on. So we're just going to come and give Johan a bit of a hand in the area and see if we can find out where the Telemates went to, because they were in this area around the boundary. Just going to scratch around, see if we can maybe find out if they did go into Manyeleti, or maybe they did indeed cross into Djuma at one point. Just going to have to go and find the last place of the tracks. Arash, that's what they always look like, I'm afraid. I've never seen a buffalo that looks happy to be doing what he's doing, to be fair. They always look like they're a little bit down. And these fellows are potentially very dangerous. Because they're on their own, their alertness is very, very low. So you can often get quite close to them without even knowing that they were there. They'll just be sitting in the shallows or in a muddy wallow. And next thing, they stand up and you notice, oh goodness, this buffalo's only 10 meters away. And then you find yourself in that very, very dangerous zone where the animal either has to run away or defend itself. And, well, they are very good at defending themselves. They're a very heavy animal, weighing in the region of 750 to 1,000 kilograms. So that's 1,500 pounds, close to 2,000 pounds at its heaviest. And they're very quick. Those horns on top of the head are not for show. Not for show at all. They're very good at using them. Well, I'm sure he's admiring his reflection. I'm sure he is. We got a nice reflection of him from this angle. But I think he was probably with that other bull, and the Telemates probably gave him a hard time, and maybe there's a third one just on the Manyeleti side, and maybe the lions are actually eating another one. You find these older bulls, they get sort of, eventually they lose interest of the herd. There's so much jostling and ego and testosterone in a buffalo breeding herd that you get these older fellows that eventually they retire. You often find them in small groups, 5 to 10. Eventually, one by one, the lions pick them off. Eventually you get them on their own, and that's why they're always so grumpy and so jittery, so frightable. because they're on their own. There's no one else to look out. We were talking about the birds yesterday afternoon, the weavers with the goshawk chasing it, how there was plenty of eyes and ears to see and detect the approach of the predator. These buffalo, they actually eventually fall asleep, and then they suddenly realize too late there is a predator nearby. And lion prides actually selectively target these fellows. We had the Nkuhuma pride late last year, or whenever it was, jumping on a buffalo bull. We saw it from the road. We weren't able to film it. And he made bellows and cries, and his friend came to help him, which was quite sad, actually, quite noble, to be honest. And the guy who was being helped managed to get the lions off him, and then the lions took his friend, the guy who came to help him. So don't let that be a lesson in life, that don't help your friends. We should always help our friends. That buffalo died being noble and forthright and sticking up for his buddy. Unfortunately, it wasn't his day. Prides we find in these areas are very good buffalo hunters. It's the cohesiveness of a herd that actually makes it difficult for lions to hunt. But when they're on their own, although they are pretty quick, it's not hard for lions to catch up with them and surround them, especially with their tendency to stick to and stay quite close to water. That's why one of the buffalo strategies is to go into the water in hopes the lions won't follow. Let's see if he's got any injuries. It doesn't seem to have. Oh, he's got a bit of an injury on his shoulder. I mean, buffalo cows certainly do have a hierarchy. You get the sort of matriarchy sort of society in the buffalo herd, and the females, the lead females, are the ones who lead the way, and everybody follows them, and the low-ranking females and older females all hang at the back. You see his shoulder there. Got a bit of a wound on the shoulder, but I don't think that's from a lion. It could be from a buffalo. It looks like a puncture. Ow, it looks quite painful. So it's very common for injured buffalo to do exactly what this fellow's doing. Go hang out in the water. And an injured buffalo is even more dangerous, potentially dangerous, than just an individual old grumpy fellow. He's definitely behaving as if he's been chased there, because if he was doing it to cool down, he would be sitting. He would be lying down in the mud. His mouth looks a bit injured as well. It's possible he's been hunted, everybody. And the only good escape is the water. And well, if he was hunted, it seems like it paid off. Lions are very reluctant to get into the water. They know about crocodiles. Okay, very good. Well, we're going to carry on, move around, see if we can find out where these lions have gotten to, but someone has found you some more cats.
Welcome back to and Beyond Phinda. We have managed to find a big pile of spots. These 5 young sub-adult cheetah are really taking it easy at the moment. You'll see that the only movement we're really getting is the flick of a tail, and every now and then one of them will lift its head up. With cheetah, it's a good idea for at least one of the group to keep a lookout for big other dangerous predators that could be around. they are kind of at the lower end of the predator hierarchy, so they do always have to make sure that they're being vigilant. You see that there's some ears flicking as well. The one at the back, every time it flicks its ear, it flicks the grass that's touching it as well. Mali, it's also very good adult cheetah again. I'm sure those of you who watch the show regularly would have seen these cheetah here at Phinda before. It's an amazing story. It's really, really special. That a sad story in a way in terms of them having lost their mother, but it's really special that they are doing so well and are coping out here in the wild. So cheetah at their age are usually still living with their mother and are really dependent on her. So they're still younger than a year old, and at this age they'd only really start participating in hunts with their mom. But from my experience, it's at this age that they don't really actually add much to any hunt. They're still quite inexperienced, so they seem to make a lot of mistakes. So they might try and charge too early, don't stalk for long enough to catch the animal. So it's really special. I think with 5 of them together, it does help. If there were less of them, I think it would be a bit more difficult for them to be able to survive on their own. And then by the time they get to about a year and a half old is when their mother would actually leave them. So they've still got about 7 months to go before that age would have come about, where they'd probably be experienced enough to survive on their own. And it is quite an unusual mixture because there's males and females. I think there's 2 males and 3 females. So it's likely that the females will break off at some point, probably when they get to about a year and a half old. And females will live on their own for the majority of their lives. The only time that they'll be with another cheetah, the only time that they would be with other cheetahs is when they are with young or mating with a male, which is actually very, very rarely seen. I don't think it's ever been caught on film before. So we're going to send you over to Carl, who has something pretty to show you.
Well, looking at the pretty things, if you look at creepers, creepers are a very prominent plant type out in the veld at this point in time. Creepers are what is responsible for the amount of ground cover, or this uniform, beautiful green carpet that we see now across Tswalu. This is a wonderful plant. There's a bee. Oh, wow. Lovely. Wow, on cue, Mr. Bee. Yo, look at that. You can see the structural component of these flowers. It is perfect. So I'm just going to use let me just get a little pointer over here. You can see the structural component of these flowers is perfect to support an animal coming into the flower. You can see this beautiful lip over here, entering into this beautiful large trumpet-like structural flower. And then the flower, by these markings, I'm just going to bend it down here, Craig. Look at those markings on the inside of this trumpet flower. Those markings are directing insect life and showing them where they need to go. Remember that they see in a different wavelength to us, and these markings could be a totally different color. Obviously, we see a very narrow spectrum of visible light, and these markings could look totally different. Even the color would be different to that of an insect, or, for example, look over here. Oh, it's gone. To that of birds. But a really remarkable flower, and you can see its shape is very, very unique. And then as well as its seed pod. So I'm going to get Craig's attention over here. Here's one that is brand new. You can just see, I'm just going to lift it up. I don't want to break it off. but you can see it's very unique, flattened disc-like shape. And then if I just want to get the light right, if I lift it up high enough, you can see these two almost like projections on the top of it. Can you see that, Craig? Yeah. Okay, so that is a newish individual. This is what it would look like when it dries out. Look at that. Unbelievable. So very unique seed as well. And this is a fairly herby smelling plant. And the stems, you can see the stems around over here. There is a lot of them. If I lift up this over here, look at this. You can see it's obviously a creeper. Look at the stem. You can see the fine hairs. If you look just above my finger there, you can see the fine hairs. Sorry? Let me get that part up there for you. Like that there. You can see the hairs, tiny hairs along the stem. And this plant grows from a woody rootstock, which will be under the ground. The leaves are very, very distinctive, obviously deeply lobed. If I lift up a leaf over here, let me get the light right so Craig can see here. Deeply lobed and very distinctive shape of the leaf as well. So using all these little points or these reference tools, we can then get to a common name. This would be devil's thorn, hence this seed pod. I'm going to come back here, Craig. Hence this beautiful seed pod, devil's thorn. Very, very unique seed pod. So doing its job, obviously supporting a large range of insect life, obviously producing pollen and nectar. But if you look at this over here, this plant would actually be used for a substitute for soap, sorry. So if you mix water and we get this leaf over here, I'm not going to do it now, of course I'll be really disturbing and damaging the plant, but if I take this leaf or a couple of them and I mix it with a bit of water, it produces a slimy mass or a foamy substance that could be used as a substitute for soap, which is quite incredible. You can even use it for a lubricant if you want. It's got a very slimy texture or feeling to it once you mix it with soap. Medically, it's actually used as an aphrodisiac, believe it or not. Obviously, knowing how to extract these parts of the plant or the elements out of it is very, very important, like Steve showed us the other day. And it should only be done with the correct knowledge or supervision. You should just not go out into the veld. Bee flew my mouth. You should not just go into the veld and start trying to utilize parts of plant. It's very, very tricky, folks. So please, only with the correct knowledge or the correct supervision should one try this. And like I said, trial and error is what these people, early inhabitants, would have gone through to find out all these beautiful uses of these plants. Very beautiful. It's also, I've also read along the lines, can be effective for constipation. I'm not going to try, but this species is mainly found through the northern parts of southern Africa, and you find it in sandy soil or disturbed areas. If you look at abandoned crop fields, you'd find this plant dominating these crop fields. Devil's thorn. What a beautiful, beautiful plant species to be looking at now, and a very prominent creeper with here on Swale. But let's send you off for a short bit and we will see you guys later.
Welcome back, and not much has changed since you've been away. These cheats are all fast asleep. Same as before, only movements are perhaps the flick of a tail, the flick of an ear. Not even one of them is keeping a lookout. It's really, really interesting to watch so many cheetah together. Especially at this age, it's something that you don't really get to see very often because obviously this is quite an unusual occurrence to have 5 sub-adult cheetahs without a parent or a mother. Fathers or male cheetah never really, well, they don't ever take any part in cubs. Once they've mated with the female, they'll be out of there and minding their own business again. So to see males and females together like this is really, really special. So what I think they're doing, I've just been looking at their bellies, and it looks like they haven't eaten in perhaps a day or two. So they can go for a few days, up to a week, without eating. Obviously, after a week they'd become really, really desperate. It's better for them if they eat once every 2 days or so. It does depend on the size of the animal that they did catch last. A few of them have lifted up their heads now. You can really see that fur on the back of their necks and the top of their head. And that just shows us again that they are quite young still. Striped Horse has asked, how fast can these young cheetahs run? So I've read that cheetahs run about 110 kilometers an hour. Well, that's the fastest that one has ever been recorded running. I think on average they usually run about 100 kilometers. And these young ones in particular, they don't look as physically strong as a fully grown adult cheetah would be. So I'd say they'd probably run just a little bit less than 100 kilometers an hour. That's about 60 miles an hour, if there's any viewers from the United States with us. And the reason I say that, if you look at that one that's sitting up now, you can see that it's still quite thin in terms of it doesn't have a lot of muscle. Cheetah don't generally have a lot of muscle in their bodies. They're built for speed and speed only. So they are quite delicate in a way. If you look at their legs, they are quite skinny, and their muscles focused on their chest and on their rump, their back legs. And that just helps propel them. You can really see now that skinny belly. Wonderful stretch. You can even see its hip protruding a little bit. So I think these cheetah might start moving at some point to try and look for something to catch. You can see how this one's just scanning all around it. And they are in a big open area. There are some thickets scattered around, which are good for them in terms of they have a little bit of cover if they want to move from bush to try and approach an animal and get as close as they can. I mentioned yesterday how lions try and use as little energy as possible. The same goes for cheetah. And it's amazing how once one has got up, you see a little bit of stirring and a little bit of movement from the rest. You see some yawning now too. Oh well, I know. And some grooming from that one in the middle. So often a little bit of movement from one will strike a little bit of action from the rest in terms of they might think, okay, maybe we are all going to get up now and start going. They'll obviously all move together. They formed quite a close bond with each other. If you look at them, you can see it. Especially earlier, they were all lying on top of each other. The two closest to each other, to us here, are the one has its back feet laying on the other one, and they don't seem to mind. So it's quite interesting to see them being so social. The cat family is not a very social family in general. I mentioned how males are usually in coalitions and females will be mainly solitary for their lives. So it's interesting to see them social. Lions are the most social of the cat species. I think they're the only ones that live in prides, at least here in Africa. And cheetah, it's important for them to stay clean. Sorry, just getting sidetracked. It is really, really special to see them like this. Susie, they do have a very strong bond. And like I mentioned, with them lying close to each other, it's just proof of that. That one at the end, you can see them whipping up their tails now too. And if you do manage to catch a glimpse of their tails, you'll notice that they're very thick, especially for an animal. We saw that animal that's so slender and not very muscular. Their tails are quite sturdy. The reason for that being is that because they have to run so fast, they use their tails to help them steer and move a little bit of their weight around so they can change direction quickly at very, very high speeds. Glenn and I are going to wait here for a little longer and see what these cheetah get up to. We're hoping that they hopefully get up soon and start moving. But we're going to send you off to another location for now.
For the month of January 2021, we are offering a chance to win a unique Wild Earth expedition to the magnificent Tswalu Kalahari. From the ancient Kortai's Koranenberg Mountains to the southern Kalahari's red sand dunes, Tswalu offers what travelers crave most: space and time. The winner will explore this landscape in a vehicle, on foot, or on horseback, with a chance to go behind the scenes with Wild Earth and of course meet the meerkats. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend at the luxury Motse Lodge, including flights from either Johannesburg or Cape Town. Open to all Wild Earth explorers who have signed up before the end of January 2021. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to my car. This is Wendy, and she's my favorite. She would love to have your name engraved on her so you can be with her every single time she goes on a safari here in Djuma. If you become a Wild Earth explorer, you will have the opportunity to buy an engraved tag which we will attach to her. We will make sure to send you a digital picture to show you exactly where you are sitting on her. You will have front row seat in every single sighting. My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
In a world full of upheaval, we all need a quiet and safe space to breathe. A place where anxiety and stress don't exist. A place where life carries on as normal. Escape to nature with Wild Earth.
Welcome back to And Beyond Phinda. You can see that these cheetah are still taking it easy. That one at the end that stood up earlier has still got its head up. So hopefully something will happen soon. But I definitely can't promise anything. You can see on the back of its ears it's quite dark. And actually all cheetah, in fact, have dark ears like that. That's what we call a follow me signal. So especially when these 5 are all together and they're moving around and trying to hunt, it's important for them to be able to understand where each other are. And this is just an aid for them. So you can imagine when they're in long grass, like grass, you can see the longer tufts of grass that are around them now. When they're all moving through an open area, it's quite difficult for them to be seen by their siblings, especially because they're so well adapted to being camouflaged that it's difficult for them to be able to see each other and to know where to go. And from the front, obviously, the color is more uniform, so they'll always approach an animal when they're hunting going forwards, so it's not really a deterrent for them. In terms of they don't give away their hiding place because the black is only behind the ears. It's always interesting to watch these 5 when they are on the move. I've seen them before. I mentioned how they are quite inexperienced. So it's interesting to watch how they've developed as they've grown up in terms of learning how to behave when they are hunting together. Sonia has asked if it's easy to ID cheetahs by their spot patterns. Sonia, it's not very easy at all. So things we would look out for are the spots, it's a pity they're all looking away, are the spots just behind their nostrils, or just below their nostrils. But you could look at any spots that, anywhere on their body actually. Every cheetah is different in terms of their spots are like our fingerprints are, they're unique to everyone. Even the stripes on the bottom of their tail there'll be a different amount of them. So if you're just able to pick a place on any cheetah, usually we use the face though, just because it's the easiest way to do it. But yes, Sonia, quite difficult. Daily Ann, yes, there does seem to be a leader. It is difficult to tell each time if it's the same cheetah. I think as of recently might be one of the young females. But I haven't seen them for a few weeks now, so I can't tell you for sure if it's the same animal at the moment. And I do think as they grow up and as they develop, it might change from time to time. And I mentioned earlier how they will probably split up as they get to about 1.5 years old. The females will have to move off on their own, and the males will form a coalition. Once the males do form a coalition, there probably will be one that will become dominant. But of course, like anything else out here in the bush, anything is possible, and that dominance can switch roles from time to time, depending on, well, it could depend on a large number of factors, to be honest. If perhaps one fared a bit better than the other one, it could have a bit more energy when they compete with each other for the right to mate. One might become a little bit more active a bit sooner. We mentioned earlier how they have such a strong bond and they really are lying close to each other. So they don't really compete, and they seem to work together quite well. You can see how they are alert to any sort of sound that happens around them. There's just a vehicle that drove past now, and now all 5 of them have their heads up just to investigate what it is. And now once that the sound is past, I'm sure that they'll resume what they were doing. The one closest to us is now yawning, which is a good sign. It looks like it might roll over now too. And like with that leopard, I mentioned yesterday how when they yawn, they're trying to oxygenate their bodies and get some oxygen to their muscles. So Sonia asked earlier if one of them is a leader. Perhaps if the leader was yawning, it might be a good sign that she would get up and then start leading all of them around. It would be interesting to see, though, when it does happen, how one of them might spark a little bit of movement from the rest of the group.
that, everybody. Technical issues coming to you from the wilderness. We find ourselves in a low signal area to get track to Manuletti. Okay, well, our signal is unstable. I'm just going to stop for a moment as we soak in the morning sunshine. This is where I had tracks of my male leopard yesterday, and he's definitely cut into the area I thought he did, which is just here off to the right-hand side. So we're going to be heading back off this way and slowly back over to Djuma. It is started to become a very, very warm morning. Very warm morning. It is nice when the wind is moving across the body, but unfortunately stopping in the sun makes it rather warm, don't you think, Paul? We're going to head back to where it's a bit cooler and see the Pinda and the cheetah.
Welcome back, everyone. So one of the cheetah has got up and it is now again laying down. It's the one on the extreme right at the moment. And it's just kind of cuddled up to the one that got up earlier. Then the one closest to us on the left is still grooming itself. There's some tails flicking, so we really, really are hoping for at least some movement. That would be amazing right now. But for the moment, it is always special to sit with 5 cheetah. I don't think it's something that's seen very often, so I definitely am very happy to just spend some time with these 5 siblings. Something to look out for here, as you can see that the difference in color between the top of their bodies and below. You see below they are a more stark or a brighter white color. I don't really know what the reason for that would be, but I think an explanation for a darker color on top would just be for camouflage purposes. We spoke about the backs of their ears earlier. And when they are hunting, the underneath of their bodies would basically never ever be visible. Especially when they try and crouch down low and get low in the grass to get as close up to an animal as they can. As it's Victor has asked how long they'll have a collar on for. Good question, Victor. So here, obviously, it's lovely to see animals without collars on. But for the purposes of these 5 cheetah, it's important for us to be able to monitor them very closely because they're still so young and inexperienced. We like to be able to find them when we really have to. In terms of game drives, we don't use the collars to find them at all. We try and do it the old-fashioned way in terms of tracking them down. But it's the habitat team here on the reserve that uses the collar. And what they do is when they need to just have a check-up on them, they can always find them. It's just for the safety of these 5 animals. And because cheetah are such high-profile animals here on the reserve, that's the reason why we do put a collar on a couple of them. The reason they are such high-profile animals is because they are extremely endangered. Basically, the reason for this being that their habitats are being destroyed or being removed. So it's important for national parks and reserves to remain open so that cheetahs can live. There is no way that they can live in areas where it's agricultural land or areas where people are living. Just because they're animals that are dangerous in terms of they'd be dangerous for farmers, livestock, we always mention how opportunistic animals are out here in the bush, so they are quite unpredictable as well. So it's important for reserves and national parks to be open for them to be able to survive. Wow, this one is really, really skinny. You can see how as it's starting to get warmer now, they probably are trying to make their way into the shade. Nina has asked what's the biggest prey that a cheetah can take down. It's a very interesting question with an answer that could kind of change from depending on how many cheetah there are in a group. So here in Phinda, it's actually an amazing story. It's something that hasn't been recorded very, very often. But there are 2 male cheetah that at some point early last year caught a baby giraffe. And baby giraffe, when they are born, weigh 100 kilograms. And this one was at least a few months old. So a prey of upwards of 100 kilograms is a really big prey for cheetah to take. More often though, male cheetah, I'm talking about male coalitions because there's more than one, they seem to target bigger prey. So male coalitions will often, not very often, but it has been recorded quite a few times that they'll take zebra foals. In terms of adult animals, female cheetah will usually target the grazing animals without horns just because it's a little bit less dangerous. But animals like baby wildebeest are also not uncommon to have been caught. You can see now the light is starting to get a bit brighter. It's starting to get a bit hotter here at Phinda. It's quite overcast though at the moment, so it's not uncomfortable for them just yet. I think if there was a bit of, or if it was clear sun at the moment, we wouldn't find them out in the open like this. They'd probably be all inside a thicket or under that tree just to their left. You can see they also have very long, slender necks, which help them just get a vantage point above the tall grass that they often are lying in. You see that one seems to have just moved its way into the shade. You'll notice that their whiskers are also relatively short compared to an animal like a leopard. The reason for that would be that whiskers are sensory organs, meaning that they help animals sense what's around them when they are moving around. Because cheetahs are mainly active during the day, they don't really need their whiskers to help them navigate as much as animals such as a leopard would. So they'll rely on their eyesight and their hearing. You see, their ears are quite big actually for an animal of their size. Well, let's hope that these cheetah, now that a few of them are sitting up, are able to spot something. Maybe they'll go lie in the shade. But we are going to send you over to Tristan, who is with a leopard.
Well, we're trying hard to get views for you of these two. I can't see where Tandi's gone. She seems to have disappeared, but we've positioned ourselves to hopefully get some view of her son. Now, it's difficult because this is the only spot where, for some random reason, we're able to get our signal. So there's a little bit of a branch in front of his face. I do apologize. But I've had the funniest time watching him. He's such a clown, this cat. He was, just now you wouldn't have heard it, but when you came to us earlier and we lost our feed, he was lying in the sand of the river, but his paws were in the water and his face was in the water too, and he was kind of sleeping with his muzzle in the water. And then he decided, no, wait, this is not actually ideal. And then he got up from there and he's walked along, and interestingly enough, came towards us. He was far down the riverbed, and we stopped here trying to see him with the binoculars. And he was like, no, I'll come and visit you guys. And he's just walked all the way up. I think it's because Tandi left without us even noticing. And I think he's bored and wants some company. So he was like, I'm just going to walk up to where you guys are, and I'm going to stop where there's some shade, and where I can see you. And then from there, we're all good. But it is unbelievably hot in the sun. Theo and I are being absolutely baked because everywhere he's sat, we can't find signal in a shady spot. So we've had to be in the sun. And I can understand why he's lying where he is and why he's going to hang around the Muluwanini riverbed. He's got nice water that's flowing, so that's clean. He's got a little bit of shade, well, not a little bit, a lot of shade, and even nice cool sand if he gets really hot. So he's in a great little place for a leopard cub. I'm sure Mom wouldn't have gone far. It was so hot, I didn't expect her to go a long way. Maybe she just kind of left and went 60, 70, 80 meters away, and then it's just lay down under a tree for some peace and quiet. On the road, when we were tracking them to start with, all you could see was her walking in a straight, or walking in one direction, and his tracks going back and forth, cutting her off in places. So he must have been a handful this morning. He must have just been going into her, bumping her head, going round, back and forth constantly. So I think she's just had enough. It's time to kind of let him sleep and take it easy. But they've definitely had a kill. The size of that tummy indicates that there is some food that they've scoffed down at some point. Jan, you say you could watch them all day? Indeed, watching these cats is a very special privilege. Here in the Sabi Sands, we take it for granted sometimes that we see them as regularly as we do. A lot of people that watch the show will get a very false impression of how leopard kind of viewing is. We are spoiled here in that we get to sit with leopards for many, many, many hours. Most days we have a leopard sighting, and when we do have a drought, it's normally for us is like 4 or 5 days, which is considered crazy. Normally you would have a situation where it's sort of most days you would have at least one sighting of them. And then not only are you having a sighting of them, but you're having prolonged sightings. So in a lot of places leopards are seen, but it's brief. They cross a road, they run into a thicket, not really a long sighting, or it's all from a long distance away. We have both relaxed leopards and leopards that allow us to get fairly close to them, which means that we can have these amazing sightings and spend quality time with these individuals. They're an amazing kind of species, and we get really intimate views into the life of a leopard. So they, unfortunately though, in some places it's trickier, but here we have a really kind of good view of them. So 50, he is turning into a little star. Most young leopards are, male leopards particularly. They're beautiful, kind of cats, and then they are generally quite full of antics. Kachava's son is the same, Sabui's son. We just haven't spent that much time with them in their formative years. I think if you find we have a female that gives birth to a little young male again on Juma like Hosana, you're going to get a situation where we're going to grow up with this little male again, and you kind of see what they get up to. It's not to say that female cubs don't do the same thing. Female cubs are also just as playful, but males tend to do stupid things. I don't know, maybe it's a symptom of the gender across the board, but male leopards seem to get themselves into all kinds of tangles. They often are putting their noses where they shouldn't be. They typically are quite sort of fun in many respects, and are little mommy's boys for the most part. They're always kind of close to their moms and nudging up on them. So male leopards are a treat when they are small. That age group between sort of 3 months until they reach about 4 years, that period is the most joyful time to spend with a leopard. You really do get an incredible sense for their character, and they have to keep themselves amused, particularly male leopards that are on their own. I find them to be far bigger characters than those that grow up with siblings, because they tend to play with their siblings and they have fun. And I mean, Hassan is a bit of a different case, because he kind of did grow up with Shongile, and the two of them used to play all the time. I mean, they used to go and into puddles and all kinds of things. But I find that they often entertain each other and therefore don't get themselves into nearly as much mischief as when they're on their own. On their own, they get bored very quickly, and then they're up trees, they're down trees, they're into holes, they jumping on mom, they're chasing this, they're chasing that. They typically just try to keep themselves busy, and it, like I say, leads to rather entertaining and compelling viewing. That's not to say that I didn't wish that there were 2 of them right now, or 3 even. Multiple leopard cubs are an absolute treat. But I think for Tundi's sanity, just the one that survived so far has probably been enough. He seems to get up in her face all the time. Every time I see her with him, she has got this grumpy face and teeth are being shown after he harasses her. No, I didn't catch the name. Sorry, Gwen, if you can just repeat the name for me. But how long will he stay with mom until she starts to chase him out? So, Belly Ann, I think it was. Tundi typically leaves her cubs quite early. She's not one that clings to her cubs for long periods of time. If we look at Tlalamba, Tamba, Bahuti, Kuchava, and Wabiyiza, these cubs all kind of were left fairly early on. So when we say early on, most leopards will leave, on average, their cubs from 14 months to 2 years. That's the kind of sort of average time period that a cub stays with mom. But what you find with Tundi is that she's generally errs on the side of 14, 15 months, so the earlier side of that averaging. Sometimes you'll find with a young male, he'll stay with his mom as long as he can, but she's pretty vociferous to her cubs. She gets rid of them pretty quickly. She's quite sort of snarly and just basically moves off and leaves them to their own devices. Interestingly enough, though, there's also a correlation, and I was reading a paper about this the other day that someone sent me, which was very, very cool. In leopards staying with their mothers and the periods that they stay with their mothers versus the population of prey animals, specifically impalas. And they're saying that basically the higher density of impalas, the younger the leopard is able to make it on their own, and the younger that they're seeing leopards leaving their moms. And if you look in the Sabi Sands, we have a very high density of impala. And so, that's probably a contributing factor to a lot of the mother leopards here leaving their cubs already before they reach that 2-year mark. They're able to be self-sufficient because there's a high density of prey already when they reach sort of 15, 16 months old. And they might not be hunting huge impalas then, but impala lambs certainly, and everything else that is around here, if you add them all together, it's a huge amount of food sources that these guys can utilize, and therefore be fairly successful when mom leaves them. In areas with low density of prey, mom's experience and her ability to catch food is going to be vitally important for them to survive. You can almost kind of see a bit of a heat haze that's developing. That's how hot it's getting. It really is steaming in the sun, and that's why he is lying where he is. But I think he's going to move. You see his head is kind of angled slightly into the sun, so it's his belly and his bum towards us, and that's in the shade. So what he might do is just move a little bit kind of deeper into the shade. So I don't think he'll go too far. I suspect that he'll end up just kind of staying where he is in this general vicinity, but he'll just move with the shade during the course of today. Should be easy enough to find him this afternoon. I say this, but he can be a sneaky little guy sometimes. Haley, how loud is a leopard's call? I'm not sure on the exact measurement in decibels. I don't know if somebody's ever had a leopard in a controlled environment where they can get an accurate decibel measure. I'm sure they have. But in terms of for us and where we can hear it from, it's not nearly as loud as something like a lion's roar, a tiger's roar. It doesn't carry nearly as far. So these guys, if we hear them from, I reckon on a good day, depending on wind direction and things like that, about 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers we can hear them from. But that's on a good day. Most of the time, within a kilometer and a half, and you start to really you sort of lose the call in the noise of everything else that goes on out here. But it's loud enough, that's for sure. They can hear it for much longer. I mean, they can hear it at 5, 6, 7 kilometers on really good days. I find when it's cold weather, the sound tends to travel further. In summer, you get your calls pretty spot on. You normally hear them and you can find those cats exactly where you kind of hear them from. Whereas in winter, I always find you underestimate just how far that sound carries, and that's because, the hot air that rises, it causes sound just to move a little bit, and interferes with what's going on. I mean, cold weather, it just seems that the sound just carries that much further. It can be quite deceptive. It's funny, this cat, he hears a car, he kind of looks up, checks everything out, okay, it's just you guys, and then back to sleep again. Now, you can imagine yesterday when we were looking for him in that grassy or long grass, how him lying like that, unless you drive over him, your chances of seeing him is almost zero. I mean, where he's lying now, that grass is probably only, I'd say, about calf height for a human, maybe a little bit less. So it's really easy to see him. But in grass that is chest high for me, it's going to be possible. So no wonder we kind of missed him a bit yesterday. But I'm glad we kind of caught up today. Right, now while we see if he's going to wake up, I'm waiting for one other vehicle, and then we might leave and carry on and see if we can pick up where Thandi went. In the meantime, let's send you across to Steve, who's also on the move.
Well done for finding them again, of course. The Talamati Pride has gone west into Manuleti. No success with them. We returned back onto Djuma, where the breeze in the moving car is quite pleasant, but it is very warm. It's going to be a very warm day today. I'm glad I got my run out the way yesterday. Now I can do some exercise under a roof, rather, in the shade. So the Nkuhuma Pride is going to be in the same place. Whether they come out or not today is debatable. Talamatis have gone west. Tristan's cats are in the semi-shade of the riverbed, so that could be quite useful. Even the elephants are hiding away. That's when you know it's hot. I don't know if the same buffalo that we saw this morning is the one we saw up in the north. It's possible, but I think it was more than one. And he was grumpy because he'd been chased. We'll see. We'll see. We're sort of in that area again where our guinea fowls were going crazy this morning. Maybe there were some other animals around and we didn't find. As Tristan says, the long grass is incredibly long. Miley, well, right now it's most certainly Thandi, but she's on Chitwa. So Hosana used to be, in my opinion, the most popular. But really, Miley, you can really stir up a can of worms, though, because everybody has got their favorite. Everyone's got their favorite. Some people are big proponents of Tingana, some love Kalamba, some love Thandi, but everybody loves them all. But who is the most popular? You'd have to put out a Twitter vote there. I wouldn't be able to give you the answer. You'd have to put out a Twitter poll. Who is the most popular leopard on Djuma? Traverse, I suppose you'd have to say the Traverse, because both Thandi and her cub are in Chitwa, Kachava and her cub are in Tortured, probably. Tingana, gosh, who knows where he is at the moment. So there's a number of leopards around. Not that I've seen one in a while, but that's okay. We will find them when the time is right. We get very spoiled here, to be honest, the amount of cats we see. We do have to work for them. And sometimes you come around the corner and they're just waiting for you in the road.
That's it, Steve. You gotta work and work hard at it. Welcome on board here at Tshwane. We are just puttering along nice and slowly, and we are enjoying the beautiful warm rays of the sun. And we are just taking it very easy because we are utilizing this road. We're trying to see if we can pick up on any tracks that we could utilize for now or potentially lead up for this afternoon. But a very beautiful open landscape we have over here, dominated by camel thorns, this area. The mountain just looking so great in front of us. Let's stop for you folks and let's give you guys an all-round view of this wonderful area. Beautiful. Thankful for a little breeze coming on the east, because like in Djuma, it is fairly warm here this morning. And when that wind does stop, you can really feel the power of that sun. Obviously sitting 1,000 odd meters above sea level, we do experience quite harsh sun rays this side. So making sure you are well lathered with sunscreen and wearing the correct gear across your arms is very important. Since I've been guiding at Tshwane, I never ever guided with long sleeve shirts. But since I've been guiding here, it's been long sleeve and nothing else. Just to make sure I'm being responsible. A lot of social weavers calling around us. That little chattering sound you can hear in the background. And the Coronaberg just looking great. So these sociable weavers are all foraging now, and they move in largish flocks. It's very beautiful to see them cross the landscape.
Well, not much has changed here. Tandy's little boy is still just sitting. I was going to leave, but then I thought, you know what? We've been looking for a few days, and we haven't had much luck. We might as well just stay out until the end with him. And he makes me laugh, this cat. Birds fly over him, and he's about 20 seconds too late for the bird coming over when he starts to lift his head and look over. So then he has to kind of do this massive neck twist to try and actually catch up with the bird. To actually see what is flying over his head. Not that with it this morning. I don't know if it's the hot weather or the big full tummy that he's been a bit slow on the uptake when it's come to birds and squirrels that have been buzzing about near him. It's amazing to see the difference in squirrels. You know, this morning when we were with those Nkuhuma females, the birds, the squirrels were walking on the road next to them, and they kind of got a bit of a fright when the one lioness lifted her head, and they went up into a tree and they just sat there looking at them. No alarm call, tail was flickering a bit, but they just sat and looked at the lions. Here, when these guys even flinch, the squirrels go crazy. They start shouting and screaming, and tails go all over the place, and that's all to do with the fact that lions don't really hunt squirrels. They, maybe as little cubs, they might chase a squirrel around, but they're not nearly as effective as what a leopard is in bringing a squirrel down. A leopard is able to climb trees, so it can chase a squirrel where a squirrel feels safe, whereas lions typically don't do that. And they're pretty agile little creatures, so a squirrel sees a leopard as far more of a threat than it does a lion. And funny enough, you can actually tell the difference in squirrels with their alarm calls as to what they're seeing. There's a very different tone and pitch and wavelength to what they're doing when it's different predators. So their alarm call for a leopard versus what they do for a lion, if a lion is mobile, is very different. And once you start to understand those alarm calls better, it can help a lot. I still haven't got it down pat. I have met a guy that was able to, vervet monkeys and squirrels, he was able to differentiate every single one, and he never got it wrong, which is useful because then squirrels become highly reliable if you can really kind of pick up the subtle difference. I'm getting better with it. I've started to understand a squirrel alarm call a lot more. Every time I have seen leopards of late and a squirrel is shouting and I know it's shouting at the leopard, I try and just film it on my phone, not from a video point of view, but from a sound point of view, and then listen back at it and start to understand more of how the pattern in the tone and pitch changes for leopard versus other predators. So it's a little project that I'm working on at the moment. I'm hoping to get it better at it, eventually try and kind of get to the point where we're pretty confident in what we're hearing. You can also tell by their chatter whether the animal's sitting or moving. The pace of the chatter gets far quicker and more high-pitched when the animal is moving. It almost becomes an urgency in the call, whereas when they're static, it's a lot slower and a lot more methodical in the way that they call, which is quite interesting. These are all little things that will eventually kind of help in becoming better as a guide. The more you do this and the more you're out here, the more you want to improve and the more you want to learn. And if you don't have an inquiring mind, then that's never going to happen. So you've got to sometimes sit and take in things. It's not just about looking at a leopard and its spot and just kind of sitting there. It's about all the other things around it that can help you decode their way and finding them better. So it's something that I would recommend to anybody that's guiding out there, is to constantly try and improve yourself. Don't ever feel comfortable in what you're doing, because you can't know it all. There's always room to learn and to grow, and you will make mistakes. We all do. We all get it wrong at times, but learn from those mistakes and keep trying to grow, and you'll become a better guide from it, especially if you accept the mistakes that you make and acknowledge them and don't shy away from them. And I think that's true of most things in life. Anyway, it's that time of day where we are going to head back to breakfast and try and get out of the sun before we get third-degree burns. I hope that all of you have had a wonderful morning with us. Hope that you enjoyed all the different things that were out and about. From all of us, it's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll see you all this afternoon on our sunset safari.